I mean this. I really love Dr. Adani. He's a professional academic, so um, I love his approach. And the one thing I want to say is, in your articulation Islamic dilemma, I don't know if you're aware that when you say the Quran contradicts the Bible and therefore can't be confirming it, that's part of our dilemma. That's actually part of the argument. So this is why when you're saying these statements that the Quran cannot be confirming everything that's with them because it contradicts it, this is what our argument is. It assumes that it's in agreement with those scriptures, but it contradicts them, and hence the Quran is not a revelation from God. Now, I don't know if you're arguing as an academic or you're arguing as a theologian, because when I heard your presentation with Paul Williams, you said you can approach the Quran from two perspectives. Either you can approach it academically, descriptively, and see what the Quran says, or you can approach it from a theological position. From what I heard in your presentation, there was a combination of both. You're assuming that the Quran is revelation, so that if the Quran contradicts the scriptures are wrong. But now let us try to be neutral. Let us not approach it theologically, academically. So when it says confirming all that is with them, you stated, well, that means would it confirm even the apocryphal gospels? Well, that's your dilemma. That's not my dilemma. That's the dilemma that you have to resolve, because there's nothing in the passages you cited, and I have a whole list of them and I can share my screen. And since you went to pre-modern tafsir, and part of your arguments is that you included Sunni tafsirs, I'm going to include them as well. So my question to you is, since the Quran says it confirms what is with them and doesn't qualify it, how do you know that the apocryphal gospels are not inspired? That's your burden. That's your dilemma. So how do you know they're not inspired?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes, I'm waiting for it. Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing is the Islamic dilemma is a dilemma. It's called the Islamic dilemma because it's an argument that Christians present to Muslims, and it actually assumes a Muslim belief in the Quran. So to answer the dilemma, I have to take a position as a Muslim, which I happen to be. But when we mince over what is the correct meaning of the Quran, because that's what the dilemma comes down to. The dilemma comes down to you guys interpret certain verses some way, yeah. I interpret verses another way. So I appeal to critical historical scholarship on the Quran because that is a good indicator of what the Quran means in its own context, just like we would do the same to critical historical scholarship on the Bible, right? So
yeah, I didn't want to cut you off. Yeah, so now you're arguing.
Your question.
Yeah, but you're arguing theologically now. So you're going to come in as a Muslim, because I was listening to your presentation. That's why I'm going by what you said with Paul Williams. So now that you're answering it theologically, since you assume the Quran is revelation, and I assume it isn't. So now the argument of the Quran is to convince the Jews and Christians this prophet is a prophet in the line of the prophets that came before him. And what he has confirms what is with them. And that's one of the arguments he gives, that they should take what he has seriously because it comes from the same source. So now, since you're saying that if we take this, and by the way, I need to screen share. I don't know if, can we screen share? Because I want to show my.
We can definitely make that happen. So just start sharing your screen and I'll get it pulled up.
Yeah, if we can bring this up. Can I scroll down, or does he have to?
No, you. Let me unshare. Hold on.
Yeah, so now is there a way you can enlarge it or no? No? Okay, we can't hear you, camera.
Oh, sorry about that. I had my mic muted. You're going to have to scroll on your end. There you go.
Oh,
you have to zoom in.
All right, okay. So you said confirm doesn't mean everything. Well, you have to first demonstrate that, not by going to a passage that says, well, see, in that same Quran, it then contradicts what is found in those scriptures. Well, are you admitting then that this statement is referring to the scriptures in the possession of the Jews and Christians, which would be the New Testament? But you're now assuming that it doesn't confirm all of it, but some of it? Because for you to go to chapter 2, verse 116 or 117, to show that it denies that Allah has a son, therefore, this cannot mean it confirms everything. So that implicitly affirms that the Quran is acknowledging the New Testament and the Old Testament, but not all of it. So earlier you said that the Quran does not at all acknowledge the New Testament. It's aware of it, but doesn't acknowledge it or even appeal to it. So what are you saying exactly here?
So I said earlier, and if you look at the graphic that I had posted earlier, right? So I said that what the Quran confirms in the case of Christianity is the
By the way, I
gospel.
can pull that back up if you want to share. It's up to you if it would be
It's
easier
okay.
or helpful.
So Sam, if you recall, in one of my slides, I had a diagram, and I said what the Quran confirms is the gospel taught by Jesus. That's how it defines the gospel. It doesn't define the gospel as writings about Jesus, and it doesn't define the gospel as a 27-book New Testament canon. Do you
Hey
agree?
guys,
Yeah, but I'm not referring to the gospel. That was part of your argument. And I agree with you that the gospel that the Quran mentions is given to Jesus. But my argument goes beyond that. It doesn't just speak the gospel of Jesus, right?
That's fine.
that's
That's
when
fine.
the
So
second
just
I
for
need
starters, though,
to win
the
because I just got
definition of
demoted
gospel
almost
in the Quran
100 hour today.
is the message
Yeah,
of
I lost
Jesus.
100 hour
It's
today
not the New
easily.
Testament.
So
Okay, so you want me
agree?
to... I mean, I can
Finish
get
it,
it, yeah, but
Barbara.
see, that's not solely my
Very.
argument. I
No,
agree.
I know it's not your sole argument, but that's a
I know
premise.
it's
of my answer.
revelation given to Jesus, but whatever that revelation is, it was there
oh, I just started playing this game,
and
so
was accessible
matters
to the
to me.
Christians per 547 other path, which we'll get into. But my argument was, what was the Quran confirming in the possession of the Jews and Christians? And it says that they're supposed to uphold not only the Quran gospel, all the revelation given to them. So this is what I'm trying to get at. What is that revelation in Arabia? What did the Christians have?
So within the Christian canon, within the New Testament, there is content in there that is extant revelation from what Jesus taught, from what the prophets taught. That
Last one side.
how do I know what?
What is your criterion to determine
no time.
that the statements in these books contain that revelation? Aren't you begging the question
true.
because you assume the Quran is revelation and it's the standard by which this is true, this is not?
Okay, so the Islamic dilemma is called the Islamic dilemma because it is an internal critique brought by Christians against believing Muslims. The Islamic dilemma is not an academic argument. It is a polemical, religious, theological argument. So
Okay.
a theological argument is
Guys, been
brought
doing
by
this just
Christians
because
to
of
a
that comment.
believing Muslim.
And that-
I'm a believing Muslim.
It's not a
Show
team
what?
diff.
Sorry?
To show what?
Brave.
To show that the claim of Muhammad that God sent him is false, that he's not a true prophet.
Yeah, so the Islamic
Wait, what?
dilemma presumes that the interlocutor already has an established
sure.
belief in the Quran. And they're trying to lead them from an established belief in the Quran as revelation to a non-belief in the
One line.
Quran and a belief in Christianity.
I'm so bad.
That's the dilemma. Okay,
ISO backside.
right. So, therefore,
Nice guy.
whoever is answering the dilemma, in this case it's me. Tomorrow you might talk to somebody else. But today it's me.
I like
So
to
in
talk to
answer, no, I enjoy talking to you too. So, as a Muslim,
Yeah.
I have at my disposal, right, all the internal resources of Islam to answer the dilemma. And to answer the dilemma, I don't have to go back and start from atheism. Of course, if you want me to do that, I can do that.
Yeah, I know how you're trying to answer, but I'm critiquing what you think is an internal method
Hey.
that consistently refutes the Islamic dilemma. So we keep repeating the same thing. So what I want to try to advance the conversation. I am aware that you think that within the Quran you have the means by which to refute the Islamic dilemma. And I'm showing you no, you're actually confirming the Islamic dilemma. If you understand the point I'm making, and maybe it's my fault that I'm not as clear. So let me repeat what I'm saying here.
Sure. Yeah.
You think the Quran is revelation, and therefore the Christians and Jews who believe that the God of Abraham sent these prophets, if they are consistent, they're going to have to believe that God sent Muhammad. And the most obvious Jews follow him.
She was there.
The Christians come back and say, well, hold on.
Stuck in the wall.
Since you claim that the same God of Abraham sent you,
Let's go,
and
let's
that your
go.
message agrees with the
Last one
prophets,
screen.
well, here are the scriptures that we have in our possession
There.
from the prophets.
Perez.
We don't
Yeah.
see you consistent with them, and that's grounds
Nah.
to reject you as a false prophet. You're now coming back. I want you to hear yourself, and I know you are.
I'm
You're
gonna
now coming
team,
back
team
and
diff
saying,
after
well,
every single round,
see,
guys. I'm
internally,
sorry.
the Quran says the scriptures are not fully intact So then you're using the Quran to show which parts are intact and those parts that contradict the Quran are false, which then leads a Christian to say, exactly, that's what false prophets do. That's what Joseph Smith does. That's what everyone does. When the Bible exposes them as a fraud, see, your Bible's corrupt. Therefore, that's part of the dilemma. That's why we call Islamic dilemma.
No, so I think what's going on here is you're not actually employing the Islamic dilemma in this original way. So
I don't
again,
know. That's all my
so
debate.
let me ask you, is the Islamic dilemma, is it an internal critique? Because that's what everybody says.
The Islamic dilemma,
Watch me,
again, because you said I'm not applying consistently. Have you watched all my debates, read all my articles to know?
I've read a ton of your stuff. I've been binging your stuff for the last month. So, and
Yeah.
Jay Dyer as well.
One sec.
Hopefully, I'll be closer. Now, let me explain to you the dilemma. The dilemma is this: if the Quran sets forth the argument that the scriptures of the Jews and Christians
Could be.
that they have
They're going Benz.
is
Or going B.
to be
They're going.
determinative for them to know whether the Quran confirms what is with them.
No, they're going
Because
Benz.
that's the
Benz.
That's not the argument.
Well, let me show you. No, remember, you did concede. There are various ways of interpreting these passages, so I'm not committed to your explanation. I'm going to critique your explanation.
Where does the Quran say? Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah.
The very passage you
Nice.
quoted, 242, you didn't quote 44. Let me go through this. And this is where you beg the question, saying, well, confirm doesn't mean everything, because here's always refuting it, which refuted actually nothing. It actually pushed the dilemma back further and caused more difficulties for your position, if I can articulate it. Here, let's go to 289. When there came to a book from God confirming what is with them, and they appertain prayed for victory over the unbelievers, when there came to them that they recognized they disbelieved in it, and the curse of God is on the believers. So that's one. But here, the one you quoted, 242 on the screen, let's read it in context. Children of Israel, remember my blessing wherewith I blessed you, and fulfill my covenant, and I shall fulfill your covenant, and have awe of me. And believe in that I have sent down, confirming that which is with you. So here's the key. I'm sending this down that confirms what you have, so believe it. Now, it makes no sense to say, hey, believe what I sent down, confirming only a part what you have, because there are parts of it corrupt, because that would be grounds for the Jews to say, false prophet. And be not the first to disbelieve in it, and sell not my sign for a little price, and fear you me, and do not confound the truth with vanity, and do not conceal the truth wittingly. Well, you can't conceal something you don't have, Dr. Andani. And perform the prayer and pay the alms, and bow with those that bow. Will you bid others of piety and forget yourselves while you recite the book? Now, I don't know if you want to argue that in this context, the book refers to the heavenly one, because it's saying it's reciting that book. So even if it's a heavenly one, they must have a replica of it on earth for them to recite it. Let me just give you one more, and then I want you to engage the argument. Now, since you quoted Sunni expositors, you quoted them. Here, I'm going to quote Qurtubi, whom you listed as one of those who thought that pretty much the New Testament is not the revelation of God. Okay, now, Tafsir al-Qurtubi, volume 1, pages 338, 339. That then means the Jews, and the book here is the Quran, while what is with them refers to the Torah and the Gospel. So now we're back to the point I'm trying to make. I can give you more. It says confirming what is with them. And here, a Sunni exegete who doesn't believe the Bible is uncorrupt, admits what they had was the Torah and Gospel, and the argument is this revelation is true because it confirms what you have. So my question to you is, here, what would the Torah and the Gospel be in their possession, and then how can you tell me it's only confirming a part of it, because that would be an argument against Muhammad. They'll say, oh, so you're saying our scripture's corrupt? All the more reason you're a false prophet.
Can someone give me that?
Okay, so number one, this is an internal critique. So if it's an internal critique, I have to repeat myself because you're missing the logic. Yeah, so when you make an internal critique, you grant the belief system of the other side, and you try to start with their belief system and you try to lead them out of their belief system. Okay, that's an internal critique. And later today, if you want me to show you, I can show you 4 Christian dilemmas that are also internal critiques, just so you can see what this is.
That would be too cloaky, right? So let's end the subject.
No. I'm just as example. So firstly, it's an internal.
You're
So
academic.
Oh, you
okay.
boycott
So
me.
second thing is these verses are not
Alright,
arguing.
nobody-
They're not saying the Quran is
sorry.
true
Yeah.
because it
It's alright.
confirms what is with you.
Yes, it is.
It's not. No, it's not an argument.
That's what it is.
It's not
I
an
don't
argument.
grant your reading. Sorry, Dr. Kandani. I'm not here to grant your reading. That's the argument.
Okay, so then I don't grant your reading, though.
Okay,
But I
so
don't
now-
grant your reading. So then your
now
dilemma
we hit-
doesn't work. If your dilemma relies on me granting every way you read the Quran, then your dilemma is just
Well-
talking to yourself.
Okay,
in a
no.
bubble.
What it proves is the point we've been making. The Muslims cannot deal with their own scripture, so they have to argue the way that you're actually making my case. So I just want to make it clear how you're making my case. This is where you're up against the wall, because if you just read the text, someone comes to the text, and not assume what you're assuming, just reading it, the argument is clear. You should believe this book because it confirms
One
what is
commitment.
with you. But then the Jews are saying, no, it doesn't.
Yeah,
It
man.
contradicts your false prophet. You see the dilemma, so you have to deny it, which you're actually making my case. This is
Oh,
your
there.
dilemma. You
Get on,
can't
get on,
grant
get on,
the
get on.
plain reading because there's nothing in
Interesting.
the context that says it only confirms a part of what they have. And you show me that in the verse.
Okay, so two
Raise
things.
100.
Number
Let
one,
him down.
there's the word because is not there. It's not saying believe in. It doesn't say believe in the Quran because it confirms. The phrase confirming what is with you is describing. It's more like an adjective. It's just describing what the Quran does. It's not saying believe in X because it confirms what is with you.
What does it do? You're saying so believe in X.
Sam, let's
forget-
let's let
Rush.
Khalil kind of finish this point here.
Tap it, tap
Sorry,
it,
my
tap it.
fault.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
The
we're-
word liana because is not there.
Yeah,
Please,
You
please.
can check the Arabic.
Nice.
It's not there.
I
So
It doesn't.
It's not presented, this is not presented as an argument the way you're
Nice.
claiming. Now, I get you read it that way,
Okay.
but I'm
Like
not
that shit.
obligated to.
I don't mean to. I just want to bring up my article. He keeps putting it down. Bring it up. It's okay. Okay. Sorry. I apologize. Continue. I don't mean to cut you off. My apologies.
Yeah.
I just want
So I'm not obligated to read the verse that way, okay?
I saw
Because
Mitch.
actually,
Kind of
what's
saved my life.
going
That
on
saved me
here
right there.
is
Oh, shit.
the
That was me.
confirmation, and I've
Oh,
already
Rena,
talked
stay back.
about
I'm gonna
this,
flash.
right? There are multiple reasons why it's not confirming
There we go.
everything.
Yeah.
Because in Surah 2,
Alright.
right, there are beliefs that are with
Oh,
the Christians,
145
such as the
minus.
sonship of Jesus, which are denied. So what I
Nice.
think you're doing, and this is a broader point that applies to what you said at the beginning of the discussion.
Let's make
So
this.
you said that, all these examples
Yeah.
where the Quran
Go ahead, somebody go ahead.
opposes a biblical teaching,
we just watched
you
this fight.
use that as a data point for
1-7.
premise 2.
I saw heaven.
But
Yep.
that data is also relevant against premise 1. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
premise
it's-
1 is the Quran affirms the Bible or affirms the New
Yeah.
Testament. That's premise
Sorry,
1.
sorry.
Premise 2 is
Bye.
the Quran opposes the teachings of the
Alright,
New
split it.
We
Testament.
back, sir.
But all
Hey,
the
oh.
data that you furnish for premise 2 is a knockdown of
Yeah, we
premise
hold
1. And the only
just
way
hold
you
it.
could
Just hold it.
argue, the only way
Fuck, what
that you
the
could
shit?
sort of
Come
make
with
an
me, bro.
arbitrary split,
We're
And-
saying it.
refuse to apply the same data to premise 1 that you put into premise 2, is by just being arbitrary, by having an assumed conclusion.
Can I address your point? 'Cause this is not like I'm not trying to, but we need to interact more than just. Okay, Doctor, you want to have your cake and eat it too. I want people to go back and hear your presentation. You yourself admitted that there is a minority view. I don't know how you determine it's a minority view because it's a significant minority view, and I can list Bukhari and others. But I want people to go back because he wants his cake to eat it too. Did we not hear you say
It's me.
that one plausible interpretation, which is not yours,
Come be,
is that
come be.
yes, the
That's
Quran
me, yeah.
confirms the New Testament, and yet it doesn't teach divine sonship in the Trinity. So your point is moot, because what the Quran would be attacking is the sonship
One triangle.
attributed to Christ
Shield.
by Trinitarians.
Oh, nice.
But you acknowledge that you can read
Nice,
the New
guys.
Testament in a way as Unitarians do, and deny the divine sonship.
Vice, could you get the vendor on me, buddy?
So
I want
that
to skip.
means even according to your argument,
Vice.
the Quran
Ah,
is
that one,
not
yeah.
contradicting the contents
Vice.
of the New Testament. So why
Thanks.
do you want your cake and eat it too?
So that's part of response number 3. My whole
Advice?
presentation
Yeah, that-
was an elaboration of response number 1, and I said that. But
But
Nice,
I'm
can I have
asking
that?
what you're saying.
Please.
the thing is, Sam, you don't buy what I said, which is fine. Like, you have every right to be not convinced, and maybe the audience is not. That's okay. So if we end up,
Thank you.
like I'm trying to show you, because remember, this is not an argument that Muslims invented.
Thanks
to screw
for picking up
themselves
the
over. This is an argument that you guys bring. So I'm saying, look, you bring the argument, and we Muslims have 3 walls of defense against this Islamic dilemma. And I'm defending on the front line on wall 1. And if you get past me, that's fine.
here,
Now you have
yeah.
to go deal with Ali Atai
Here.
and Reza Shah Kazemi. That's wall 2.
Zoom
And
this
then if
out.
you go through wall 2, you have to go to Sayyid Ahmed Khan with wall number
Doesn't mean
3.
anything.
That's all I'm showing. And I'm
Still,
building up wall number
some.
1. And I think I have the right to do that.
Okay, now let's come back. So
Okay, BBB.
I'm going to get past your wall 1, but I'm trying to show it does not logically follow. You're an academic and you're professional. And I
Well-
respect your position. I'm not just saying to say it.
No,
I mean that. So
fighting
it
B.
does not follow just because chapter 2, 116 denies
Why not?
what you believe to be the sonship, that God has a son, that it's then denying the New Testament, even according to one of the positions that you articulate, which you don't accept. So granted, you don't accept that view, but it's still a view that nonetheless shows
Raises heaven.
that the Quran can be denying the Trinity and still confirm the New Testament. So I'm going to ask you again,
Raise heaven.
in light of these verses that speak of confirming what is with them, where do you get in these passages,
One
not
card.
other passages that you assume,
Fuck
116,
my God.
117, I can give you chapter 9, verse 30.
What's behind?
I know what the Quran
I mean,
says. You're assuming that because these statements say God has no
That's
son,
right.
and the Nasara, who say that Messiah is the son of Allah, Allah fight them, that means it's contrary to the New Testament. No, it would only mean it's contradicting their interpretation, which falls under one of the passages you cited, chapter 3, verse 78. They twist it with their tongues, but it doesn't mean that the Quran is attacking the text.
Go
So I'm
again.
trying to
What's wrong
have
here
you
again?
prove to me from these verses that it's saying the text is corrupt. You haven't done that, Dr. Adams, so I'm waiting for the evidence. Give it to me.
Okay, so again,
says so,
Sam,
so
you
we're
assume
going,
that
like,
the Quran
close.
confirms the New Testament. You
Yep.
assume it, and then you want evidence that it doesn't confirm it. But you have to first show me, where does the Quran say this 27-book New Testament is revealed by God? Where does it say that?
That way. It says,
Where does,
Nice.
confirming what's with them. I'm going to answer you, Dr. Sir, I promise I'm going to answer you.
yeah, so where?
When
Once
it says
the law
confirming
have-
what was with them, and in 566-68, it says that the Jews and Christians are to uphold the Torah and the gospel and all the revelations.
Close
sent down.
out.
One's probably in
I
verse.
ask you again,
Close out.
historically, what is that revelation
Watch your right.
given to them? See, I'm
What's your
asking
right?
you.
What's your right? Vice?
You're not answering.
Vice,
I'm going
vice.
to ask you again.
On your right, on your
It's
right.
not just Torah and gospel.
Yep.
You focus on the
Fuck.
gospel. It goes beyond the gospel. It talks about
That's right.
what is with them, and they didn't just have the gospel. Even if you want to put in
You say
apocryphal
right.
gospels, that's your dilemma. That means the Quran is confirming those apocryphal gospels, and therefore the canon of the Christians is bigger, not smaller. But specifically in 566, let me show it to you now. 566, 68, and I can bring in the study Quran, which is also modern Quran. I'm just telling you, it's not my view.
I could buy
Some
someone a
people
guardian.
think no, you even admitted it in your opening. I want Christians to go back
Request a
to
guardian
this. He admitted.
or something.
Yes,
Move
there
on.
have been Muslims in the past, and there are also present Muslims who agree with my view. The Quran does not teach that the Old and New Testaments are corrupt, but they are the scriptures
Are they?
entrusted to the Jews and Christians. Now, Dr. Andani, even though you threw these two under the bus, I'll ignore them. I'll just go with what it says. I won't read Torah and Old Testament. I'll just read as Torah and
I mean, it doesn't say Old Testament. You're using these
No, but-
you're using these
Okay.
amateur translations.
No, it's
it
not
says
amateur.
One more
Torah,
going here.
it says Torah and Injil. I don't know why you
Torah,
use.
I'm going to challenge you, Dr. Andani. Show me where the
Most
Torah
terrible.
in your Quran
Oh fuck, to win.
is something that is defined as given to
Ashes
only
and
one
ends.
prophet.
One's
Where does it
rope.
say that?
Yeah.
Well, in Surah 6,
Keep going,
in
keep going.
you have to realize that in the Meccan period, Torah and Gospel are
Where?
not used. Only Kitab and Hikmah are used. So in Surah 6, it describes the kitab given to Moses.
Okay.
And
The Torah.
oh, I'll get there.
Please
Yep,
go.
I'm dead.
Yeah, so Surah 6
One's still
describes
dead.
the word Torah
One's
is
still
not
dead.
in the Meccan part of the Quran. We have to keep that in mind. Torah and Injil only are used in the Medina part of the Quran. So in the Meccan part of the Quran uses this generic term kitab. So it talks about the kitab given to Moses, in which is guidance
Follow.
and light.
Or on the way, yeah.
Later on, a decade later, in Surah 5, it talks about the Torah, in which is guidance and light given to the children of Israel.
Nice.
So
Okay.
the
That's fine.
description of the Kitab Musa and the Torah are basically the same, and their functions are the same.
5 HG is
And if
crazy.
you don't believe me,
Yep.
go read the Harvard PhD dissertation.
Give authority, not to the internal Quran.
Excuse me, can I finish?
Wait, because I'm trying to address that you didn't answer my point.
Well, I'm
Actually,
I'm literally answering your point.
Fast.
Yeah, let's
So-
let Khalil finish.
Well,
his,
I'm
thought
clear.
here.
You said interaction. Camera. What do you want me to do? Well, go ahead.
You know, I'm very
I'm gonna
happy to
just go on
interact with
site
you,
and
and correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
Rita, make
I've been
sure to
trying
flash yourself
remain
because
silent
they have
while you
unlimited
complete
smokes.
your
You can't be
thoughts,
like scared of going
and
through
I'm just
smokes.
trying to do the same thing. So,
Can I just address that though? The point is, this
Well,
is
I don't think Khalil finished his
No, I'm
thought
not
yet.
addressing his argument. I'm saying what he just said here. The
Hold
only
on.
reason why I'm cutting off is not because I want to cut you off. It's because
Sure,
I don't want you to just bring in other points. And when you bring a point, I want to address it immediately, lest it becomes lost. That's the only reason why I'm doing it. But finish your
happened.
point, because I just want to repeat what you said.
so
Since
you
in-
asked me.
Good.
You asked me, how do you know the Torah
it's 1 gram.
is the Kitab of Moses? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay. So
My smokes are gone.
if you track
Ready?
the Kitab Musa, if you track that throughout the Quran, everything it says about the Kitab of Musa, everything it does, okay? And then and the description, then if you track the word Torah, and you track the Torah's description and its function, you're going to find that they're about the same thing.
Got it.
And if you don't believe me, because this is just a stream and I can't demonstrate it, go read the
Oh my bad.
PhD
Fuck.
dissertations of Professor
That's a good try,
Mohsin
man.
Goudarzi. He's a Harvard professor of Quranic studies. His entire PhD dissertation is on this very topic, that the Kitab of Musa is the Torah.
Okay. Now, can I address you?
Yeah.
Can I address your point?
Sure.
Okay. I'll do you one better. I'll give you the Salaf, because again, remember, you went to a PhD, a modern academic. I'm going to go to pre-modern Islamic
guys are
exegesis.
reinforcing?
I'm going to quote the
gonna
Sunni position, where you're going to have Ibn Kathir admitting that the Salaf use the word Torah for all the scriptures of the people of the book. So you can appeal to modern scholars. I'm going to appeal
Pushing.
to Muslim expositors, pre-modern scholars.
trade.
Let me get the article. So let me now address your point as I bring you up this article. I just got to put in the right words. First of all, I want everyone to see what you did. You went to chapter 6. Where it says a book is given to Moses. Folks, I want you to notice, it never said that book is the Torah. Then he made the logical leap in assuming, since that book has guidance and light, and the Torah has guidance and light, it must be the same book because it's given to the children of Israel. But then the gospel is also guidance and light. Does that mean the gospel
Oh, yeah.
is identical to the Torah? Even in your position, it's not identical. But more importantly, the Salaf say the Torah means more than the books of Moses.
noise.
Here it is. Ibn Kathir on 757. Please don't throw Ibn Kathir under the bus, because you referenced him as one of your points that agrees with you. New Testament's not that revelation. Here it says, it was common in the speech of our Salaf that they described the books of the people of the two scriptures as a Torah, as some hadiths concur. So you haven't proven your case. So I'm going to come back to...
Sorry, Sam, I'm having trouble understanding the relevance of
Go,
your point.
go,
So
go.
firstly, so what does the meaning of the Torah have to do with the present discussion? Number one. Number two, why are you... Number two, Sam, why are you appealing to a scholar, Ibn Kathir, when the same Ibn Kathir
Oh
holds
my fucking god, I
position
almost...
that the Bible is not preserved. Why are you making an appeal?
Wonderful, because since you appeal to Ibn Kathir, holds your position, your same authority now refutes the other part of your argument. That's why I'm appealing to it. But first,
Oh, we're working for
Part
for
of
back.
my argument,
Please.
because I haven't talked about the Torah in my argument. My argument is about the Gospels and the New Testament. So if you accept Ibn Kathir,
cut me off.
if
No, you
you
cut-
accept Ibn Kathir, then I don't know why we're here, because Ibn Kathir holds my position. He holds number one. And Qurtubi, by the way, holds position number one. He doesn't hold position number
If you want me to adjust, you want to talk.
Oh, Reina.
You're cutting me off. You
Yeah,
don't
let's
me
let
finish.
Sam.
I know I'm not getting heated, but it's okay. We're professionals.
He's not getting heated. He's over there smiling, chilling, having a good time. Everyone's
Yeah, no,
having a good time.
Okay, let me repeat.
I'm having fun, so please go ahead. I'm enjoying it.
I love you, guy. You're a professional, man, and I'm honored to share the platform. I mean it, because I'm just some internet apologist. So for you to share this platform
Everything is
when you actually rub shoulders with academics, that's actually, I consider that an honor. So God bless you. But coming back to the issue, if you remembered why I said it, because in your slide you mentioned Ibn Kathir, you mentioned Qurtubi. So since you appeal to them holding your position, I'm using now
I
the
ripped.
very sources that you appeal to show they agree with you, to show now they disagree with you that the Torah is limited to the books of Moses.
she make the
Now,
back
coming
heaven.
back
She's
to
going
the
back heaven.
question, why'd I mention it? Because you threw Muhammad Ahmed Samir under the bus saying Torah doesn't mean the Old Testament. Yes, it does. According to Ibn Kathir, they're right.
You know, they
you're
can see it.
wrong. Here, let me read what he says. So you threw these people under the bus, ad
Doctors.
hominem them, because they're not academic. Well, I'm not an
Nice.
academic, so why are you sharing the platform?
Can you get it done?
Well, now
Which?
let's come back to this. It was
Right.
common in the speech of our Salaf that they described the books of the people of the two scriptures, Torah. That means Muhammad Ahmad Samira are being more faithful to the historical context of what these terms mean and to Islamic tradition. But that's neither here nor there. We actually forgot the original point. What was the original point? You remember what the original point was? When you said, nowhere does the Quran confirm the 27 books in
don't
Testament.
peek
I
it.
said, oh,
If you're peeking it, just
because let's
crouch
go
and
back
peek.
to the point, which was the initial point. This is why I stopped you. It's not because I'm trying to cut you off. When you keep going on and bringing other issues, I got to keep up. Here, one more time. 566.
We share alone.
Now I'm going to ask you the question. We're going to move with your
One slow-
preferred translation, Torah and Gospel. Had they followed the Torah and the Gospel, and what was revealed to them? It's not just Torah and Gospel. It says what was revealed to them from their Lord. And then again it says, tell the people
Check me, guys.
you have
Please.
nothing unless you follow
I'm planting.
the Torah and the Gospel, and that
Yes, sir.
God has revealed to you. So I'm going
stuck.
to ask the question, which I didn't get an answer, at least maybe not to my satisfaction. Since the Quran doesn't just say the Torah and the Gospel, it says Torah and Gospel, whatever was revealed to you. Can you now tell us historically what else did the Jews and Christian have that they believed was revelation to them that the Quran tells them to uphold?
Okay.
One drop, one drop.
So firstly,
That's fine.
the opinion of the Salaf
Nice, good try.
does not entail that that's what the Quran means by the word. You know, and we recognize this in modern academia,
enemies.
that the
Nice.
Quranic exegesis of the Salaf,
Oh, fuck,
or
everyone died.
whoever it is, there's a big gap
Nice,
between
good.
that and what the Quran actually means. Now, the reason why I put tafsir scholars on my slides is not because I appeal to them,
Let's go,
but you
guys.
appeal to them. You cite tafsir all over your articles. You throw tafsir at various people. So,
I
in
don't have money.
anticipation that you would do that, that's the only reason I have tafsir.
Why you did with Paul Williams? When you had a presentation with Paul Williams, that's the reason why you cited them? Because in your
Cited who?
2-hour presentation with Paul Williams, which I watched this week,
Someone buy
you
yeah,
referenced, you
nice.
said to him, pre-modern
Yeah.
exegesis of the Quran, you
Right.
mentioned, right? So were you
Smoking.
mentioning
3, 2,
the
1.
tafsir because of me?
Oh.
You had me in mind in your presentation, Paul?
No, okay. So the presentation on Paul's channel is an academic presentation. So I made two claims. I said, from the academic critical perspective, this is the view of the Quran, which is the view that I put forth. Then what we do is, as an academic activity, you track how was the same issue understood by post-Quranic scholars. So as a good scholar, I showed a Mu'tazili view of Jahiz. I showed a Sunni
Tango
view
plan.
of Ibn Taymiyyah, and I showed an
Go
Ismaili
plan, go
view
plan, go.
of Qadi Nomad, right? And that's called reception history. I was not telling Paul, you know what, Paul, because Qadi Nomad says this, you should believe me. I never made an appeal to tafsir. But what I know is that when you argue theologically, and that's what you do, and I don't mean that as an insult by any means, because I have a lot of respect for theology, and I also do theology in some of my published work. So when you argue theologically with other Muslims, you appeal to tafsir. But I find we're quite selective. So when Ibn Kathir says something that's making a mini point that you like,
I'm not
you
gonna
quote
out.
Ibn Kathir.
Sorry, guys.
But then when Ibn Kathir says, for example, his commentary, Surah 12, verse 111, where he says the Quran only confirms parts of the scriptures of the people of the book that are true, and it doesn't confirm parts that are false, that's my view, you say no, that's inadmissible.
I'm saving.
So
Address that point before we go into other points, because you brought up a lot more
sure,
points.
yeah.
Still didn't answer the question.
How do you see consistency in your approach of citing, like sometimes like Ibn Jurayj, his
Everyone
opinion
make sure
on
that you have enough for next round.
on Muhayman, you throw that out, but then you'll find him quoted in another one of your articles about something else, and you'll approve that.
Very easy.
Could be up top.
Very easy. I mean,
Whenever
you
the world
study,
there's one
you
up
know
top.
this. When Ibn
Yep.
Kathir says something that's not in the Quran, and he reads into the Quran like you do, that's when I question the validity of his exegesis. Because even chapter 12, verse 111, what you appeal to, I will challenge you to show me in chapter 10. In fact, if Cameron can bring up my article again, I don't know where this guy disappears to. Cameron, we need the article, brother. Stuck for a lot.
I don't
Okay.
disappear anywhere. I'm right here.
So now here's my criterion right here. I'm going to show you. 1 second.
Oh, one's behind as well.
Let me get
Fuck
it
this.
here. The reason why
Broke
I
their own
reject
wall.
Ibn Kathir, because
Behind.
Ibn Kathir will acknowledge there are others besides him, like Bukhari, that doesn't accept his position, and Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, who is another disciple of Ibn Taymiyyah, which you also referenced at the very last point with Paul Williams. And I have Ibn Taymiyyah. But even Ibn Kathir doesn't have the unanimity of even his contemporaries agreeing with him. And more importantly,
Right.
chapter 12, verse
Yeah,
111, the context doesn't say only a part of it. Let me just bring it up. Sorry, I just got to bring it up.
No, but Ibn Kathir says it's only a part of it confirmed.
That's
his
my point.
opinion.
The verse
Yeah.
itself doesn't say it. So when Ibn Kathir clearly is reading his bias into the verses like you have
Nice.
been doing, and the verse doesn't say it only confirms a part of it, but it confirms what is there, then when Ibn Kathir says, well, we got a problem here, folks, and what's the problem? Let me just get the verse so people see what we're talking about. I got too many articles on this.
One more heaven.
Subtracted my mind.
You do realize that I gave you a very good
The ops
reason
there,
to
yeah.
conclude the Quran is only confirming a part of what is with them. So if I write an essay, and at one part of my essay I
he's gonna
say I agree with the views of Cameron
They're
Bertuzzi
back.
on whatever, and then in the same essay I pick out a particular opinion of Cameron Bertuzzi and I say this I believe is wrong.
Here's Res.
Yeah.
You would just read the first part of what I said, but you would ignore what I say on page 5, or you would accuse me of logically contradicting myself. I think the most charitable reading, based on the basic principle of charity, if I say I agree with Cameron on page 1, and then on page 5 I pick out one belief of Cameron, oh, he's a Catholic, and I think that's wrong, nobody would say I contradicted myself. People would say that you agreed with everything that
That's
Cameron
right.
says, except this particular belief that I called out as being false. The Quran does exactly the same thing. So that's just called a charitable reading. You call it a bias, but I don't think it's a bias to read any text charitably. If I pulled out John 17:3 and said the Father, according to Jesus, is the only true God, the first thing you would tell me is, well, you need to read everything
You have enough
else
for up, so
that's said in John 17 before you use that against me. I don't see how what I'm doing here is any different.
All right, well, now you understand why I stopped you at key moments, because it was fine, I don't mind, but let me go back to your example. Did you hear how you began your example? I've been paying attention. You said, if I said on page 1, I agree with Cameron Bertuzzi on one particular point. I'm just saying what you said. You qualified it. So if you qualify
When you rotate,
your agreement with what Cameron Bertuzzi wrote, saying, here
Wait, do you
I
zero?
agree with Cameron Bertuzzi on this, then I know that you have an agreement in this area, not all areas. But this is where you're begging the question. None of the verses that I've cited make the qualification.
55 on us.
You make that qualification.
No,
Ibn
the
Kathir.
surah-
Preach, why do you out
The
this?
surah-
You're saving, right?
Let's let Sam finish his
Surah
his
2, Surah 2, Surah
doesn't.
4. Both surahs say
I'm gonna get to
confirming
four.
what is with
I'll get to four. I promise you, every
But
verse you
both-
have, I'll
Again,
get to.
both
Okay.
of them say confirming what is with them, and in
It's not for you.
both surahs, the sonship of Jesus is denied. Now, if you think the New Testament teaches the sonship of Jesus, if that's what it means, then the Quran is denying that. It's
Okay,
pretty
so
simple.
can I address you without you cutting me off? Because you accused me of cutting
Yeah,
you off.
go ahead.
All
Sorry.
right, let's go to 12:111, the very passage you cited. Let me enlarge it. Because you said to me, and I'm going to quote Ibn Kathir. We're not off of Ibn Kathir yet. I'm going to now use Ibn Kathir to prove my point. So we're not done with Ibn Kathir, and I'm going to get to your assertion of sonship. Because even then,
We need to
Look
win
at
this,
this.
or else we'll
how
go
are you?
broke.
And by the way,
next
I
round.
don't know why you
So-
made a big deal about between his
See what
hands.
happens.
No one takes that literally. It's an idiomatic phrase. And by the way, it's not just Muhammad Samira. It's Muhammad Assad. Go read his commentary, his explanation.
I did.
Okay.
One's backside,
I
yep.
did, but he doesn't interpret it your way.
Can I make
That's a
the
bit
point?
deceptive.
So, Cameron, how come you don't tell him he's cut me off? When I'm trying to
I
make
did.
We do
I
up.
did tell
I
him.
apologize. I thought I was.
I did tell him. Yeah.
Okay. We'll
If
get-
it happens again, Khalil, I'm gonna have to mute you. How about that?
all right, then you
Oh,
guys
what's-
get out. So 12
Get out of here.
And now, remember,
Yes, sir.
folks, what he said, that I reject Ibn Kathir's exposition of this passage. Now, you're going to see why.
raise hand.
In their
Right.
narration, information had been example
Alright.
warning to those of the pure mind's hearts.
Last
There
one,
was
last one,
information,
last one.
speech to be fabricated, but confirmation, forget about the
Nice.
We're going to forget about that. What was before it? Now, can anyone tell me where this passage says confirming only a part of it, like he and Ibn Kathir stated?
This still have
Let
ups
me read it
for
again. And confirmation what was before it. No qualification. No only a part of it. No only some of it, most of it. That's what you have to do, and Ibn Kathir does, because you're stuck. Because if you take what it says and you agree with what it says, that means it's over for Muhammad's prophethood. Because the Bible
We should
that
ban
he
this.
supposedly
Ban
confirmed
it.
shows he's a false prophet. Now, before you come in with your response,
Okay, no one's here, no
now
one's.
here
It's fine, it's fine.
again, I'm not alone. I'm going to show you what Ibn Kathir, and he's not the only one, by the way. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah
I'm fine.
cites al-Bukhari, as does Martin
Fine.
Whittingham,
Nice, you have ups.
Professor of Muslim views of the Bible in the first 4 centuries, recommended by someone you like, Shabir Ali. That's how I found out about the book. So I want to see
Heaven.
Ibn Kathir,
Yeah, just play
who
back,
says
guys.
only a
Play
part
safe,
of
play
it,
safe, everyone.
Al-Bukhari, who disagrees with it. Here it is. Al-Bukhari in Russian.
Nice.
This is his note on this section of
Can't help you,
Kitab
bro.
al-Tawheed. By the mouth and inscribal, Qatada said that Mastur means different. Yastur means they inscribe. And almost
Just. We need the guns.
He said, Matel Fizul, excuse my bad Arabic pronunciation. He does not say
Yeah.
anything but what is written against him. Ibn Abbas said, both good and evil are recorded. You
Nice.
harafunna, which is the word where we get tahrif, means they remove. No one removes the works. It's a typo from Aisha Bewley. So it's the words of one of the books of Almighty Allah, but they twist them, interpreting them improperly. So now let's see what Ibn Kathir says about this, and what others say, modern and.
Okay, guys, half of them are broke, 2 of them have guns.
Martin Whittingham, what does he
Yeah,
say?
only Astra doesn't have a gun.
Just
doesn't have a gun.
tradition literature contains
Sage
few
and Race might have
references
one.
to textual corruption in the Bible. It likewise provides
Sage,
few
Sage might have one, the other two
biblical
don't.
interpretation.
So,
Al-Bukhari
Listen.
adds a note between hadiths in the section of his hadith collection entitled The Book of Divine Unity.
you guys
Here he
are
quotes
smokes.
Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas, Muhammad's cousin, one of the companions, is commenting on the term You harifunna, referring to Quran 446, the passage you just mentioned, which we're going to get to. Because in that
Repeat.
context, it actually proves Logos Christology,
not-
contrary to your assertion that the Quran denies Jesus is a created
Guys, come
word.
back. Guys, come back. Come back. Guys, come
Which
back.
uses this term. Ibn Abbas is reported as explaining, you harafunna, by saying, But no one removes an utterance from one of the books of God, but they altered it. They interpret it according to the
Ashes on site
wrong
on A.
interpretation. Now this
Siege
puts
screens. Go, go, go.
those who follow Bukhari in a dilemma. Because elsewhere there's a statement attributed to Ibn Abbas that seems to suggest that he
They're coming,
thought
they're coming.
the Bible's corrupt.
I'll
So
watch.
he addresses it. This concerns Quran 446, which specifically uses. So
Just
by the way, I
run,
have the
guys.
book right here.
Make sure
So
she
people
doesn't
don't think I'm making it
get
up.
the pick.
Here's the book right here.
Alright.
So I'm quoting accurately, so people don't then. I know you know he's an academic,
Nice,
so we know that you know that he's in the field.
nice
All
go.
right, so now let's continue. This concerns Quran 446,
88.
which
Nah,
specifically accuses some
Shit, man.
Jews of taking words out of their context. The statement appears to conflict with Ibn Abbas's other statement, and that he quoted above, and involving Quran 279, which states that at least some Jews corrupted the text. Notice, some Jews, even if we grant that interpretation. Not all Jews, and it doesn't indict Christians. The two statements could be reconciled if the accusation related to Quran 279 was regarded as only describing a specific group of Jews rather than as a general statement. I'll skip the fact that he brings in Al-Darimi as saying the corruption is interpretation, because I want to go to Ibn Kathir. Watch Ibn Kathir. Okay? And Al-Jawziyah quotes Bukhari too, by the way. But I want to go to Ibn Kathir. Here's Ibn Kathir, who in that same passage says, well, it can't mean the Torah and the Gospel they have today, because all the Arabic version shows corruption. Again, begging the question. But here's Ibn Kathir, his exposition on chapter 3, verse 78, which you can read online. He quotes Bukhari. All right, here we go. On the other side, that's Al-Jawziyah, sorry, Mujahid, Al-Shabbi, Al-Hassan, Qatada, and Rabbi bin Anas said that who distort the book with their tongues means they alter Allah's words. Al-Bukhari reported that Ibn Abbas said that the ayah means they alter and add, although none among Allah's creations can remove the words of Allah from his books. They alter and distort their apparent meanings. So here you have Ibn Kathir saying Bukhari cites Ibn Abbas to show the books have not been corrupted, they've been misinterpreted. And Al-Jawziyah quotes him too. But I'm going to avoid that because Ibn Kathir doesn't accept this, like you don't. But I'm not obligated.
I fucking Rado was talking about how
Kathir's
she's like
rejection
depressed for
because this
selling all
statement
game.
is
annoying.
actually confirmed by the Quran. Your position is reading into the Quran. So that's my
let's,
response.
fucking
let's get Undani back in.
Murphy kid.
So firstly,
And we'll let him. Donnie, we'll let you go for a while because that was a long one.
Yeah, so I'm a little puzzled on what the point is. What point are you trying to make by bringing up Bukhari? Are you just simply trying to say that look, the Muslim belief that the texts of the revelation have been corrupted is not universal. It's not unanimous. I already conceded that at the beginning.
No, that's not
right?
my point. You want me to repeat
Okay.
it so you can address it? I don't want to cut you off, but I want to.
I think you've gone long enough, but
Okay.
so you're saying that you disagree with Ibn Kathir. You disagree with Ibn Kathir because another scholar before Ibn Kathir, Bukhari, takes a view different from Ibn Kathir. I mean, that's not news to anybody, right? We know that some member of Ahl Hadith did not believe in the corruption of the text. But if you scroll up a little bit, Ibn Kathir also gave the opinion of Qatada and others who are also Salaf who do believe that the words of God were altered, right? So basically in the early period, and I've said this in my slides, in early Islam, in the first 3 centuries, both views coexist. And the view that the actual words of revelation have been corrupted, that view is as early as the 8th century, if not in the Quran itself. And again, I will remind you that according to Walid Saleh, the academic consensus, and consensus here means the majority, not unanimity, the academic consensus of critical scholars on the Quran is that the Quran does assert the textual corruption of prior revelations. And I said a Muslim who accepts that view is on very firm ground. So there's nothing that obligates a Muslim to follow Bukhari's opinion over Ibn Kathir's, over Qatada, over over Al-Jahiz, right? Over Qadi Abdul Jabbar, over Qurtubi. Qurtubi does actually say that the Gospels that the Christian have is not the Injil that was revealed to Jesus. Like the thing about tafsir, Sam, is tafsir is not. Well, I don't know. Are you still here now?
I think he had to plug in his laptop. Maybe.
I just
The thing about tafsir is not a prescriptive discourse. It's an exploratory discourse. And what I mean by that is there are certain discourses in Islam where you have to follow a school of thought and you have to follow the views of those scholars. An example is Aqidah, creed, which you're quite familiar with, right? So if somebody says they're a Salafi or they're a Hanbali, they have to subscribe to an actual Hanbali creed, which is a set of theological opinions, you know? Same for Asharis, same for Maturidis. Tafsir doesn't work like that. Tafsir is very much a buffet of opinions, and that's why that's why one mufassir like Tabari or whoever it is, Ibn Kathir is a great example. Ibn Kathir will report a wide range of opinions on a verse, many of which he doesn't personally hold to, and then he'll just settle on his conclusion. So what I'm wondering is, in this discussion between us, right, on the Islamic dilemma, if you're presenting that dilemma to a Muslim, and the Muslim has to go interpret the Quran, right, to address the dilemma, let's say the way I'm doing it, there are ample resources within the tafsir tradition for a Muslim to go to. Ryan Schaffner's thesis gives like several examples of early Muslim scholars going back to the 8th century who believed that the revelatory texts are corrupted. So any Muslim can just point to that. For me personally, it's much easier. I'm not Sunni, so I'm not even if Sunnis were beholden to all the tafsir opinion, which they're not. But even if Sunnis were, I certainly am not beholden. And as a theologically believing Ismaili, I would simply go to my imams and my dais, and they're quite clear that the Bible that you guys have today is not the original revelation. But I don't really see the point in, like, you can appeal to Bukhari, and the other thing about your appeal, I could still disagree that that's what Bukhari meant, because, and again, nothing much rides on this, but the section of Bukhari that you quoted, where he quotes the opinion of Ibn Abbas, which says nobody can alter the words from God's kitab, that whole discussion is in the context of the guarded tablet. And the guarded tablet is a pre-existent heavenly book that contains a transcript of all
Phoenix likes pushing up through showers.
And at that level of the guarded tablet, nobody can change anything, right? And that's how many have interpreted Ibn Abbas's comments, because he puts Ibn Abbas's comment, no one can alter the books of God, like in the section on the guarded tablet. So that's another way you can still read Bukhari and reach the same conclusion as Ibn Kathir. But I'm not exactly clear on why you're appealing to what Ibn Kathir may cite, even though in the same text Ibn Kathir refers to other people besides Bukhari who hold the opposite opinion that you yourself are arguing for. So, like, what does this really accomplish for us?
Yeah. Now again,
let's try to be shorter in our back and forth here.
See again, Duncan. This is why I'm cutting you off, because you keep missing the point. I'm responding to you. You forgot what the argument was. I'm going to remind you how we felt this. We ended up on this rabbit trail. If you go back to the initial point, you asked me, why is it I reject Ibn Kathir? I'm going to remind you what the conversation is. See, you keep bringing up additional points, and I have to jump with you. I don't mind jumping. I need to lose weight. I've been gaining weight, so I got to lose it. I want to look like Cameron.
Good shit.
Let me remind you how we got here. You mentioned Ibn Kathir and chapter 12, verse 111. You mentioned it, that he said only a part of it. And then you asked me, why is it I accept a part of Ibn Kathir and then I reject the part of Ibn Kathir? My response was, because that's not what the verse says. He's reading into the verse. And by the way, even though Ibn Kathir holds to that position, not everyone held to that position. And you just admitted, you admitted, even among the Salaf, that there was two positions. That some said it was corrupt, others said it's not corrupt. But that backfires against you. If the Quran clearly teaches the scriptures are corrupt, why the confusion even among Muhammad's companions? If the Quran was clearly teaching their books are corrupt, there would be no difference of opinion from people who either met Muhammad or those who were taught by Muhammad's disciples. That actually backfires against you. It doesn't backfire against me. And the comment that this is referring to the preserved tablet, take that memo up with Ibn Jawziyah and Ibn Kathir, because Ibn Jawziyah cites Bukhari, Al-Razi, and others as one of the groups of ulama This is in a long, lengthy reference that I quote. He's mentioning the Islamic view of the Torah. He says there are 3 views, which is relevant to our talk. He says 3. Okay. Now, you and I know well that Ibn Jawziyah is coming 700 years after the reported death of Muhammad. He says even at his time, and you acknowledge this, so I'm not saying you're not, but I want the Christians to hear this. You see why it's a dilemma? You guys can't get out of it. Glory to Jesus Christ. But even at the time of Ibn Jawziyah, he says there were 3 views regarding Torah, that it's completely corrupt, and another view says only slight modifications, but he gives the view of the middle. He says there's a view that says the Torah cannot be corrupted, it's not corrupted, and he gives the names. You want me to bring up the article? You can read the Arabic. I have it.
Big brain.
We'll do it if you want. And he says Bukhari was one of them. Al-Razi was one of them. Al-Razi and Bukhari. And then he mentions that they gave evidences to show why the Torah cannot be corrupted. One of their proofs was chapter 6, verse 115. None can change the words of Allah. Golly gee, it's not just Christians who appeal to 6:115 to show if none of the words of Allah can be corrupted, that means the Torah and the gospel can't be corrupted. This group appealed to your Quran to say Torah, gospel, words of Allah cannot be corrupted, to prove the Torah on earth, not the one in heaven that no one has access to on earth, cannot be changed. And they also quoted the hadith of Sunan Abu Dawood. Camera, can I bring it up so people can see with their own eyes? All right, so we went a far drift because you took me a far drift and you still didn't answer the question. I'm still waiting for an answer for 566-68. So hopefully we go back to that, and then I have something to talk about the creative words which you denied the Quran teaches. Au contraire. And if you want the Arabic, I'll let you read the Arabic here. There it is. Right here, black and white. Let me enlarge it. Boom. There goes. Right here, enlarge it as large as I can, so people can see. Right here, where am I quoting? And the Arabic text is right here. Here's the Arabic. Now watch. He mentions the middle view. On the other side, another part of Hadith and fiqh scholars said that these changes took place during its interpretation, not during the process of its revelation. This view is the view of Abi Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ishmael al-Bukhari, who said in his Hadith collection, surprise David, my boy David, whom I love. He's saying Bukhari's not talking about the heavenly tablet. He's talking about the Torah on earth. And he cites this. And then he mentions Al-Razi as also saying wholesale corruption of scriptures is impossible because of tawattur, because it was spread all over the world. Well, I'm not saying you have to agree with Razi. I'm saying the view that best comports with the Quran wins out. Your view doesn't comport with the Quran. So I have to read into it. But here, the Hadith. Abu Dawood narrated in his collection that Ibn Umar said, a group of Jewish people invited the Messenger of Allah to a house. When he came, they asked him, "Oh, Abu Qasim, one of our men committed adultery with a woman. What is your
73 on Brim on B.
So they placed the pillow and asked the Messenger of Allah to sit on it, meant to say sit. And the Messenger of Allah proceeded to say, bring me the Torah. When they brought it, he removed the pillow from underneath him and placed the Torah on it and said, I believe in you and in the one who revealed you. Then said, bring me one of you who have the most knowledge. So they brought him a young man, told him the story of the stone. Now, this group of scholars here, this is Ibn Qayyim, not me. The scholar said, if the Torah was corrupted, he, your prophet, would not have placed it on the pillow and would have not said, I believe in you, the one who revealed in you. He's talking about their copy, not the one in heaven. Now watch the verse they quote. This group of scholars also said, Allah said,
Thank you.
and the word of your Lord has been accomplished truly and justly. There is none who can change his word, and he is the hearing and knowing. And what did they conclude? The Torah is Allah's word. So they're appealing to the Quran and the Hadith to show the one on earth, not this imaginary heavenly one, that cannot be corrupted. So to remind you, I only went on this rabbit trail because you accused me of selectively citing Ibn Kathir, just like you selectively cite him, even though as an Ismaili, you're not bound to his opinion. And my ground for rejecting part of the statement is because the Quran contradicts his position. So do you want me to go with his opinion over against the Quran? All right. Then the Quran is wrong, Ibn Kathir is right. But you didn't answer my question. Did you know that, Adani?
Can I respond now?
Go ahead.
Okay, so now we actually have gone on a tangent, but Sam,
Yeah, you get
I
true
asked
borders,
you.
not
The
true borders.
original question was,
Gauges
where does
also.
the Quran affirm the 27-book New Testament? You
That was my-
agreed with me.
From
You
the
agreed
deadline,
with
yeah.
me that the Quranic
Gauges was,
gospel is
unknown.
only what Jesus was given and what Jesus taught. That's the definition of Injil in the Quran. We all agree. But your Islamic dilemma, the first premise is the Quran affirms the divine inspiration, divine authority, and preservation of the New Testament. Now, the New Testament is a library of 27 different books by, I don't know how many different authors. Okay? That is, so the burden, if you claim with your dilemma that the Quran affirms the New Testament, the burden of proof is on you to show that the Quran confirms the 27-book New Testament. Now, that's already hard because the Quran makes no reference to the 27-book canon of the New Testament, and it never actually confirms it, right? So, your answer to the burden of proof that you have was to ask me a question, and you asked me, what is the word? How do you know the Torah is the Kitab of Musa? And then we went down on this rabbit hole, and we brought up. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm
Definition
very
of
happy for you
util
that
down.
you
Holy
think
shit.
Fakhruddin Razi affirms that the scriptures
You
can't
wanna
be
wait for
corrupted.
that?
You can take your Islamic dilemma and give it to Razi. You can give it to Ibn Qayyim. You can give it to whoever else you've cited.
We
You can
just,
give it to
take
Bukhari.
CB
Now, the
here.
problem with giving it to
CB?
Bukhari is Bukhari
CB.
also quotes a hadith from Ibn Abbas, where Ibn Abbas says that Allah has told you that the Ahlul Kitab, the Jews and Christians, changed their scripture and distorted it and wrote the scripture, the Kitab, with their own hands. And this is basically a commentary.
You misquoted Ibn Abbas. I just read to
It
you.
And
It does say that.
Run from Muga.
No, it doesn't.
You're reading something. You are reading something else from what I'm
Bro,
reading.
what?
So I know that read where it says, why do you go
Oh,
past them?
fuck. My
Bro, how
bad.
Yeah,
did Deadlock
it said
get in?
they exchanged.
Who's they?
It said they changed and altered the
Who's
Kitab
they?
of Allah.
Did you
The
hear the
people of-
quotation I gave you from Matt Whittingham? Do you want me to
But
read
it
it?
doesn't matter. I'm reading a hadith. Can I show the hadith?
Sure. And I'm going to show you the response to it, but you didn't listen to it.
This could be.
Again, but the point is that if Bukhari himself
Thank
is citing different opinions of Ibn Abbas, and actually, the source you quoted, Whittingham,
Okay, bro, you
says
sound
right
like a
at the
Mustang
beginning of a
guy.
paragraph that there is
Oh, no.
material that
I'm forced, bro.
asserts textual corruption.
I wouldn't touch
So
that shit.
here's the thing:
I have
you can
force
take
by
your
47.
Islamic dilemma and you can take it to somebody like Razi because he agrees with your premise. But what I will not accept is when you say Ibn Kathir is wrong because he doesn't follow the
that's
Quran.
correct.
But apparently,
That's 100.
the Quran is whatever you, Sam, say the Quran means. So that's basically what you're doing. You're presupposing that your reading of the Quran is right. But I disagree. We are. But I think it's important to point out for the listeners as well that you and I disagree on what the Quran means. You and I, we disagree, and that's okay. But for your dilemma to work, I'm the first
One
wall.
hookah.
So if you want to get past the first wall, right, you have to convince me
One hole.
without appealing to any exegete.
Yeah,
You have to convince me based on critical Quranic studies scholarship that the Quran affirms the New Testament. That's what you're going to have to do.
Can I
Okay.
get without you repeating the same
143,
point?
one tap.
Because I was trying to get to it.
Good shit.
I'm not repeating, but let me
You are.
continue. So the burden of proof to affirm the New Testament in the Quranic view is on the person making the claim, which is you. Now, I'm going to say this again.
Get to it?
Walid Saleh, who I quoted on my slide, says that the academic consensus on the Quran is that it asserts the textual corruption of prior revelations. That's Walid Saleh speaking for a lot of scholars. And if you're interested, Sidney Griffith. You know Sidney Griffith? You cited him before.
And then, you know, you're filibustering and you're killing time. Can we get to the issue?
Can I actually ask a question? I've been pretty quiet. So what is the point of that, Khalil, pointing out that the scholarly consensus is that there's corruption in the New Testament. Because I mean, for someone like Sam, like he's not gonna because I think one of the points you made earlier is that charitably you would assume that these two things are consistent, right? What we find in 566 and then the scholarly consensus that there's corruption. But from Sam's position, he might just hold that there's a contradiction here, and so that's a reason.
By the way, Cameron, if you ask him a question,
No, so what I'm saying is that Sam believes that the Quran affirms the New Testament. That's his belief. Your whole dilemma has to ride on that. But number one, this has not been demonstrated positively.
you haven't let me demonstrate it. You keep cutting me
Sam,
off.
look, you cite all these mufassirun. Guess
No,
what?
I want to cite the
None of
Quran.
them-
You're supposed to
none
know.
of-
Good shit.
Hold on.
Jesus.
You cited Bukhari on the Torah.
that lock, bro.
Okay, you cited Josiah on the Torah. You cited Razi on the Torah,
sure.
but you know what? None of them believed in the New Testament canon. The most charitable view that you find in Muslim history from Bikai, 15th century, is that the four Gospels preserve the revelation.
Can't just have a monologue. I can just sit back. I mean,
Why am I being interrupted though?
because
Well,
you're.
yeah, I'd like to. I want to do. I do want to hear him finish his thought here, and then after that, let's do this. Let's turn back over to Sam to give us his positive case.
He's not finishing the
My
thought.
push
He's
here.
going about what I brought up, and I brought up these Sunni scholars that he disagrees with. So he's not addressing your question. He's now telling me what I did and how I failed to prove my point. Because he hasn't let me prove my point. Because every time I go
But
to
none of the scholars you appeal to believe in the New Testament canon. So the most charitable opinion that you find is A, the Torah is preserved, and B, from Bikai, and it's a minority, that the fourfold gospel has preserved the words of Jesus. That's it. None of these people cited the New Testament canon as revealed by God in the first place.
So,
None of them did.
so what is your Khalil? What is your response to my question?
yeah, he didn't answer you. He filibustered. Exactly.
Your question was about academic consensus, right?
No, it was about. So I was questioning why you were bringing that up, not just about the consensus itself.
I'm
Why?
bringing
Yeah,
it
why
up
are you bringing that up? Because
Okay,
and what
because
I also added on to that in Surah 566, the verse that Sam was appealing to in terms of like his positive case, why the Quran refers to the New Testament. And then you appealed to the scholarship to saying that it was, it's corrupted. So why would the Quran affirm the New Testament and then also admit that it was corrupted? That's the scholarly consensus.
There's no New Testament in 566 or 568.
Can I make my case to show you wrong?
That's not what I was saying. That's not what I was saying. I was asking why are you mentioning the consensus? Because for someone like Sam, he doesn't accept that the Quran has to be consistent.
Okay, but
itself.
Sam doesn't. So the thing is this: if you read any text, you have to read it holistically. You don't read one part of the text in isolation from the other part of the text. Nobody, we don't read the Gospel of Mark that way. We don't read the Gospel of John that way. So we can't artificially split up the Quran into different parts and then say, each one taken in isolation contradicts. You have to read the Quran holistically. And I don't trust people like Sam to do that because, no offense, you guys are doing polemics. So what we can go to, and Sam doesn't trust me or other because I'm a Muslim, Sam doesn't trust me. Okay, so now if you don't trust me and you don't trust Sam, because maybe we have our own agendas, and everybody does, right? I can at least point out that there is an academic majority who believe the Quran does teach the corruption of prior revelations. That's it. And once that's on the table, we still lack a positive argument from Sam or David Wood that the 27-book New Testament is affirmed by the Quran. Now, Sam, I know you want to say something about that, so why don't you go ahead?
Cameron, brother, when you ask him a question, you give him another. Now, this has been 10 minutes he's been going on. I've been trying
I think he did it. I think he did answer. I mean,
what's ironic here?
He was fighting last time.
Okay, now, Cameron, I want you to remember, I want everyone to go back to his presentation. Cameron, maybe I didn't hear him correctly because I was probably busy writing. But could you remind me, without him interrupting me, because I want to go to the point, didn't he say that one possible plausible interpretation is that the Quran does confirm the New Testament? It's just been misinterpreted. Wasn't that one of the points, even though he doesn't hold to that point, when he brought it up on his slide? So here you want to have your cake and eat it too again. You're first telling us. See, that's not.
I don't.
Well, he was
no,
getting
but
he
I
was
don't
giving different
appreciate-
options. He,
I
That's
don't
my
appreciate doing straw
Ah,
man,
my
Sam. If
favorite
I give
part,
3
side
options
profit.
and I say I believe
Oh, yeah,
option
Sam,
one,
those
I'll
are
just
you
pull back.
can't come and
fucking
say,
on
"Oh, you're
decent right now.
contradicting yourself."
Himself. Yeah.
let's do this. Instead of kind of go back and forth on this, let's now talk about your positive case for Sam. Why
Bring
you
up,
think
bring
that?
up my article, Mary Miracle. I mean, Fadani, please.
Alright,
I
so
know,
we do
I
that
know it can
after
get
you got
heated,
it,
but
I got
brother,
you.
my brother in humanity, take
Okay.
it easy, man. I'm gonna get to my.
It's not
cake.
heated. You keep saying it's heated. It's not heated.
Yeah, Sam. Maybe the heat is on too much at your house, man. You should.
Oh man,
turn-
it's very hot, and I need to lose weight. But anyway,
Are you sweating? Is there some sweat there?
I'm
Maybe
sweating
turn on the
lots.
AC, man.
let me know, guys, when you want me to make my case. I'll be waiting.
Go make
go
it,
ahead.
Sam. You got it.
Are you sure, Cameron? Because now you're. No, it's
Sounds
okay.
like me.
It's your platform, dude. I'll wait.
Take it easy. Take it easy. Go ahead.
Oh wow! I was all right. Okay. Here is what I was trying to show, which, again, because we went on 5,000 tangents
Smoke
and he
it,
never
smoke it,
addressed it,
smoke
so I'm
it.
going to try it again. Here's the positive case. Please hear me out. I said that the Quran says it confirms what is with them, and here again, 566, 68. And I'm not going with
I tripped
the
it.
translation. Forget the
Might be
translation.
rotating.
Had they followed the Torah and
Watch,
the
I said it
gospel
was
and what was revealed to them from their Lord, and then it says you have nothing unless you follow the Torah and the gospel and what was revealed to you. God revealed to you. This invites an historical
Smoke it, smoke it,
inquiry.
smoke
An historical inquiry. If I was going to follow the destructive method, I want to now know what the Jews and Christians had at the time of this passage, because the passage is telling not you, Adani, to read your view of what the Quran is saying, not saying. It's telling the Jews and the Christians, you have nothing
Oh yeah, I
to
can
stand on
fucking
unless
get
you
one,
follow the
actually.
Torah,
It's
the
on
gospel, and all the revelation given to you. So now my question, which you didn't answer, and I'm still waiting for the answer, just 15 minutes, you didn't answer it. Historically, what did they have? Because it's not just the Torah and the gospel. You want to deny the gospel
switch it up.
is the New Testament, fine, I'll give you that.
Should be
You want to
going.
deny the Torah is anything other than Moses, I'll even grant you that. But it's this part, Andani, what was revealed to them, not to you, to them. You have nothing unless you follow the old and Torah and gospel, and that which God has revealed to you. So what was revealed to them? So who am I going to ask? I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to ask the Jews and
Sounds like
Christians. What was revealed to you? By golly, even if you want to include the Apocrypha, I'll give you all that. Man, I'll give you the Pseudepigrapha, I'll give you Enoch. They still had the New Testament, and there's nothing in this passage that qualifies it. So could you answer the question, which I've been trying to get you to answer? Please explain to us non-Muslims. Explain to us non-Muslims. What was all the revelation that the Jews and Christians had at that time? At that time, tell us
They would say-
historically. Don't give
wanna
us your
pick with me?
theology. Go ahead.
Okay, so firstly,
Hitting shower.
there are 2 options here. Well, actually, there's 3. Number 1, this could refer to
side,
past
side.
revelation, revelation of past prophets. Obviously, this is not referring
Good
to
shit.
present revelation. I don't know any Jew and Christian claiming
I hadn't done this whole
that they have new bishops receiving revelation in the 7th century. So it's not referring to revelation that's actually being given to different prophets at that time. Okay, so it's not that. So it can only either refer to a past revelation. For example, Jews and Christians have revelation from other prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah and so on. So it can refer to that. Okay, it can also refer to the Quran, because parts of the Quran are sent down for Jews and Christians, right? Many verses begin with, O people of the book. So there's a good portion of the Quran, including in Surah 5, verse 15, that Surah 5, verse 15 begins with, O people of the book, O people of the Kitab. So that's an example of what has been sent down to the people of the
Oh, there you
Kitab
go.
within the Quran. And actually, many commentators believe that phrase, what has been revealed to you or to them from their Lord, refers to the Quran. A third option is that the phrase, what was revealed to them or what is revealed to you from your Lord, that is a specification. So sometimes in Arabic, you have the word and, the word wow, and what follows that is not a third object, it's just a specification, a description of the other 2 objects that were mentioned. So the same verse what says to Jesus, he will teach him the
Smoke
Kitab,
it. Smoke
the
it. Flash
Hikmah,
Look at me,
and
dude.
the Torah and the
I heard this guy
Injil.
flash me.
The third wow, the third and in that verse is understood by many as a wow of specification. So in this case, then it's just an additional description of the Torah and the Gospel. The other thing I would say is that Surah 5, which I
Good
know you
shit.
guys are big fans of, Surah 5
And
is
I think
telling
they bought it
Jews
for
and
a week now.
Christians to follow the law
Crazy.
of the Torah and the Gospel. It's not telling them to follow the theology of the Torah and the Gospel. Even the
Yeah,
earlier
it's-
verse, and I had a slide on this too, when it says judge, let the people of the Gospel judge by what God has sent down therein, is talking about law.
Okay.
So
Can I,
the funny thing is, you guys don't even follow the law, right?
Okay,
So
I just-
we have academic studies by Mohsen Goodarzi and by Holger Zelentin. Holger Zelentin has an entire book on this. The Quran is commanding Jews and Christians to follow the dietary laws and the penal laws. And the great
Hey, you go,
irony
Clove, you
of
go,
a
Clove.
Christian
I got
bringing these verses
Chad, I
forward
like
as
doing
an
it.
argument for the Christian position
Crime lord, I'm
is that you don't even follow the dietary laws that have been,
One behind that box.
given
I trust you
in
instead
the
of you
Torah.
going to because you changed it to chapter 5 for
Great.
which I trust you very beautifully. But let me
So
go back.
bringing these verses doesn't show that. Now, again, I'm going to repeat my request.
Hit raise rate.
Where in the
I address you
Quran? Where,
before you address, because you made up 4 points.
Depends
Can
on
I
your own
address?
eye.
Then you can repeat your request.
well, I
Because
had your
Oh,
address.
shit,
is-
I
you're
thought-
supposed to answer my question.
both were
Where
there.
does the Quran
run
confirm
away
the
from me,
divine
okay.
revelation, authority, and preservation of
Oh,
the
yeah,
27
yeah.
book, the 27 book New
I don't
Testament?
know.
Where is it?
okay. Now let me propose to your
Which Muslim exegete actually affirmed the New Testament besides a modernist like Sayyid
let me
Ahmed?
address you. Can please, brother, respect yourself. Let me address.
It's Danny. It's
Can
not.
you step in, brother? Because you're John. You're letting this guy just filibuster talk over me. This is unprofessional.
My
don't
name is going to be mispronounced. I should correct it, right?
Okay.
I don't.
Khalil
I don't call
Andani.
you.
Khalil
I don't
Andani.
call you.
All right.
I don't.
All right.
call
All
you
right.
Dan.
Everyone.
Cameron, if you want to end it, let's end it because it's getting nowhere. Because you're letting him talk over me. I want to address this
He
point.
muted. He actually muted himself. He muted himself. So we're good to
Good.
go.
Good. Okay. Now, number one, I want you to notice the admission. He did admit that this can refer to the books like Isaiah and Daniel, which means it can refer to the New Testament. Thank you for that admission. Number two, your first point is a straw man. No one says that this is referring to revelation given at that time, meaning that they had prophets with revelation. It's obviously speaking of the revelation given in the past that's in their possession. Thirdly, even though you made a big deal out of the wa conjunction, but again, contextually, you have to define the conjunction. Contextually, it says the Torah,
40 on Brim,
wa
right there.
Injil, wa and. Now, even in your view,
Okay, nice.
the gospel is not identical to the Torah, even though you believe it's a revelation given to Jesus, and that's the wisdom given to him, where he exhorts people to uphold the Torah. In the context, clearly,
This part, they have it.
and Torah
It's saying-
and Injil
That's
and
good.
Revelation,
Yes,
they are three different aspects of that revelation. They're not one and the same. Moreover,
Sure.
even if you want to include the Quran, even if you want to say it's saying, hey, it's the Quran, you got to follow the Quran, still,
Yeah, that's fine.
that would entail following everything they
Oh, you
had,
see-
not just the Quran. And since you went to the commentators, guys, did you hear it? You went to the commentators. Let's see. You went to the commentators, but you're going to say, well, I'm an Ismaili, and let's go to academics. Let's quote this academic here and there. All right. So let's see. It concedes your interpretation, but also it says
Nice
this.
shot.
If they had observed the Torah and Gospel, if they had accepted what is in the Torah and the Gospel, demonstrate the traits and description of Muhammad contained therein, and that which was revealed unto them from the Lord, and had they elucidated that which their Lord had explained to them in the Torah and Gospel, it is also said that this means if they had believed that all the scriptures and messengers are from their Lord. All the scriptures and messengers, not
Really,
just
yeah.
Quran, whatever scriptures, the messengers, and by the way,
Hey, shield
chapter
to
4,
us,
verse
shield.
164, it says there are messengers that Allah did not mention by name. So by a rule, you're in no position to reject a book by some messenger believed by the Jews and Christians just because he's not mentioned by name. Because 4164 tells you that a messenger is not mentioned by name. So you're in no
got the
position to
joke
say
there.
we reject this. So what grounds do you reject the New Testament? Here again, 568. All scriptures given to all messengers. Now coming back to you, jumping to 5:43-48, you're saying, we Christians, how dare we quote the Quran that says follow by the law of the gospel when you're told to uphold the dietary restrictions. And Danny, how would the Christians know what the gospel exhorts them to follow if they didn't have it at the time of Muhammad? So you just proved my point. That means the gospel must be there for them to know that the law of the gospel exhorts them to follow the dietary restrictions, which means they had the gospel of Jesus. So I'm going to ask you, what was that gospel? And finally, read your Quran in context. You accuse me of reading out of context? I guess you forgot chapter 3, verse 50, where it says that Jesus not only confirmed the Torah
100%.
before him, but he made lawful some of the things that were unlawful. So if I follow your
We all
argument,
got ults.
then I believe the Quran. That means Jesus made things lawful for his followers that were forbidden for the followers of the Jews. And hence 5:43-48 doesn't make your case, it makes my case. That's why the Christians follow the law of the gospel, because it assumes there are things in it that the previous Torah either forbade or allowed. So we follow the law of the gospel. And that's why Muslims follow the law of the Quran. But again, if your argument is to work and
Fucking headset
sorry,
just
I'm not
died
trying to deliberately
mid-game.
mispronounce your name. You can call me Shamu. I won't get offended. That's
Did
not
not
a point.
hear jack shit.
In 5:46 and 47, how could the Christians at the time of Muhammad even know what the law of the gospel is if that law of the gospel of Jesus wasn't preserved by Muhammad? So here you have Revelation. Historically, they had the New Testament. You can't get around this. And secondly, if they had the law of the gospel at the time of Muhammad, surely they knew what the gospel was. So I'm going to bring it back to you. What was that gospel? I'm going to bring it back to you.
You're still muted. Let me unmute you. See if you can. Oh, it looks like
Good
I've
shit,
muted you.
GG guys.
So in Surah 5 and in Surah 3, the Quran defines the gospel as the teaching of Jesus. You already agreed to that. In Surah 5, it tells them to follow and judge by the gospel, which means the teaching of Jesus. So the answer, of course, is very easy. The legal teaching of Jesus, which I said in my slide on option 1, I said the gospel of Jesus is embedded within the 4 gospels. You can find it in there, but it's not coextensive with it.
Okay.
Now, if you were to follow the law taught by Jesus, you would be following a lot of the Jewish laws. At least the Jewish Christians would have to follow certain laws. They'd have to follow the whole Torah, basically, except what Jesus has abrogated. And if you're a Gentile Christian, you should not be eating unclean meat. So do you have pepperoni pizza or do you not? And if you're a Jewish Christian, right, you have to follow the Torah. That's what Jesus taught. So again, what I think you keep doing here is you keep eliding the idea of the New Testament collection with the Quranic idea of the gospel, and these are not the same thing.
It's not what I'm doing.
Well, I think you are. So they're not the same thing. So when the Quran uses a word and it defines it, and then it uses the same word in the same surah many verses later, we don't forget the Quranic definition of the word and then read in New Testament. We have to track the Quranic definition of the word. And the primary problem with the Islamic dilemma, as you put it, is your first premise is the Quran affirms the revelation, authority, and preservation of a 27-book New Testament.
It does.
And the only thing that the Quran affirms is a gospel taught by Jesus. The Quran also says that a party among the children of Israel, which includes Christians, by the way, forged kitab. They wrote something and they said, this is from Allah. So your New Testament, from a Muslim perspective, is a mixture of the authentic teaching of Jesus plus things written about Jesus, as well as, and you brought this up, you know, this whole thing of corruption of the interpretation. Well, the problem is the New Testament technically is a memory account of the teaching of Jesus, which has been transmitted like hadith, plus second, third, fourth generation interpretation of the teaching of Jesus. In the New Testament, both of this is mixed together. So even if you follow the minority view, which says the Christians corrupted the interpretation, but they kept the verbatim revelation, even if I grant that, your canon is a mixture of revelation and corrupt interpretation. They've been mixed together. So what the Quran allows you to do is it allows Muslims as well as contemporary Jews or Christians to recover some of that authentic gospel of Jesus. How do you do it? The Quran itself is supposed to serve as the arbiter and the criterion. And that's not just my opinion. I quoted at the end of my presentation Nikolai Sinai, who's not a Muslim. He himself said the Quran sees itself as the ultimate arbiter of all the prior scriptures and what they mean and what they're supposed to mean. So that is how you recover the original gospel. The other way to recover the original gospel, which we can do today, is if we use the historical critical method that I use to understand the Quran, if we apply that to the New Testament and to the four Gospels, we will be able to recover in high probability what the authentic teaching of Jesus was and what the other stuff that is just interpretation is.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's get Sam back in here. Real quick, hold your thoughts if you can. I want to address the audience really
I
quickly.
don't want to forget his points because he just. Okay, but good. I don't want to forget. Go ahead. Yeah, what is it?
Right, just really quickly, that's the thing, is that I need to discuss timing and go into some Q&A really quickly. So if you guys do want to send in a super chat, that's the way to ask your question. We're about to transition to Q&A in just a little bit here.
Well, so one thing, just for the sake of a good discussion. So look, we and Sam, we don't see eye to eye on this, and that's okay. That's fine. I would be interested if Sam is up for it. Sam, you've said, for example, and this is just an opportunity for me,
Before
right?
you get to that point, can I address you so I don't forget your points, and you can ask me later?
Sure.
I want to get your points. Okay. Number one, the Quran is not talking about you, what you can do today. See, you're again either not listening to the argument, and you're throwing out smoke and mirrors. The Quran is talking to the Christians at the time, Muhammad. You're not living at that time. So it is irrelevant what critical scholarship in the 21st century think they can do in recovering the gospel. You're not the audience of the Quran. It's referring to the Christians at the time of Muhammad. So to then read back into that modern historical critical scholarship or historical methods to try to find the gospel, that's anachronistic. That's the first error in your logic. Secondly, you then applied a passage where it says that the children of Israel, a part of them, wrote a book of them, and then ipso facto, that includes the Christians. Where did you get that from? It's about the children of Israel. But even if I grant that to you, you're accusing me of reading the Quran selectively. You're the one reading the Quran selectively. Because there may have been a party who did that, but the same Quran says, chapter 3, 113 and 114, not all of them are alike. So I'm using the Quran to refute your taking verses out of context. And I'm the Christian. You're the one supposed to be doing that. Not all of them are alike. Of the people of the book are a portion that stand for the right. They rehearse the signs of God all night long, and they prostrate themselves in adoration. They believe in God and the last day. They enjoin what is right, forbid what is wrong. They hasten in emulation all good works. They are in the ranks of the righteous. And then 3:199. And there are certainly among the people of the book those who believe in God in relation to you and in relation to them, bowing in humility to God. They will not sell the signs of God for miserable gain. For them is a reward with their Lord, and God is swift in account. So even if I grant the way you read into that text, children of Israel means the Christians, that's a group of them. But there was another group that would not sell the signs, that recited their revelation, and supposedly also in the Quran. I'll even grant that. I'm very generous and charitable. So that didn't help your case. But now 547. Let the people of the gospel judge by what God had revealed therein. You conveniently said that, yeah, that means that the gospel of Jesus was contained New Testament, but the Quran does not confirm the New Testament, only those aspects of Jesus' teaching. Now, we got a problem, friend. If the New Testament is a corrupt text, then how is it that a corrupt text can be trusted to preserve the core of Jesus' teachings, and that to know that those are the teachings of Christ without 21st century standards of historical criticism, which did not exist at the time of Muhammad? In other words, by extension, if the gospel of Jesus is in the New Testament, or at least the gospels, and that's where you'll find the authentic teaching of Jesus, then by extension, that means those books must be preserved to be trusted, to know that you're getting the teachings of Jesus. But now you want to go back and say, well, it was third, fourth generation, but you're burying the Quran then. If even what is in the New Testament doesn't actually preserve the authentic teachings of Jesus, you just made null and void this verse, because this verse has no meaning, no application historically, which means the Quran is speaking incoherent babble. Finally, you like to appeal to academic scholarship like Nicholas Sanai. I'll do you better. I will quote the study Quran, Muslims, saying that 548 doesn't imply what you suggest. Now, Cameron, let me bring it up. Because he's saying, see, 548 means, for the Muslim, the Quran is muhaymin alayh, which means we use the Quran to determine what's true in the gospel. That's a misreading of the context. And I'm going to let the Muslims, not Nicholas Sinai, your Muslim scholars, study Quran, make my case for me. Let me just bring it up. So you have said nothing, Khalil. I'm still waiting for good arguments that historically the relation given to them would have been the New Testament. All your rabbit
Sam, you have to prove that to me. You still haven't done that.
For those who have
Really
ICCL,
quickly, we are going to transition to Q&A. So I think we're going to have to leave this last section for Sam, and then Khalil, if you want to ask him your question that you originally wanted to ask, and then we'll move to Q&A. Which during the Q&A section, there's still going to be more time to chat and talk and discuss these issues. So we're by no means is the conversation over.
Yeah, let me just get this for him, and then finally, and if you want to engage me, Khalil, because you said the Quran denies that Jesus is creative logos, I'd like to discuss that with you.
Well, I wanted to, you said earlier, you said on your articles and your podcasts or whatever, that the Quran doesn't deny the Trinity. Do you still hold to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can start with that.
Well, yeah, well, that will be part of the discussion.
I was also interested in chatting, better understanding. You're very interested also in the Quran upholding the Torah, because you have an argument out of Genesis 18 and 19 about that God or Yahweh is multi-personal. But I wanted to get some clarity on that from you, so I wanted to also chat with you about that.
You want to Okay. Now here, to study Quran on 543 to 48. Guys, he quoted Nicholas Sinai. He's an academic, but these are also academic scholars, and they're Muslims. Study Quran. Guys, watch. Let me read. Page 298. Verses 43, 44, study Quran. Remember, these are modern academic Muslim scholars, so you can't say, well, they're Sunnis. And no, because you even had Shia involved in this study Quran. You can reject them, that's fine, but this verse then, along with verses 44, 47, indicates that the Torah and the Gospel remain valid sources of moral legal judgments and guidance for Jews and Christians, respectively, even after the coming of the Prophet, indeed, even in his presence. See also verse 68, where the people of the book are likewise enjoined to observe their scriptures. All right, now look what it says about 46, 47, then we're going to read 48. In the present verse, both Jesus and the gospel he brings are separately described as confirming the Torah.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I already read this, and actually I don't have a problem with this, but I would direct you when it says at the beginning, moral and legal judgment. And that's what I was saying. That's how I started this whole discussion of Surah 5. I said these verses are about legal judgments. But what you guys do with your dilemma is
let's let Sam finish his point here about this, and then like I said, we do need to turn to Q&A. So I've got a few people I've got to.
It's a little bit unfair that when he talks, he reads out like an entire page of a URL,
and you speak about
really long, and I don't do that.
Well, you're welcome to do that if you want to. We can share your screen very easily.
But the thing is, like, I've already read this article. It's already published. I already know what it says.
It's not just you though that's participating here. It's also a huge audience. So let's let them understand his point as well.
This is confirming what I said. I said it's about legal rulings. That's exactly.
All right. I'm gonna have to mute Khalil here. All right, let's go.
Come on, Khalil. You're better than this. No, let me remind you of the point, guys. Did you hear him? He said 548. He mentioned 548, and he quoted Nicholas Sinai saying that the Quran is the criterion for Muslims to judge those parts of the Torah and the Gospel That's why I'm reading it. If you read it, that means you know the response and you made it anyway. So now let me refute the response. It's not just about you, it's about the audience. So guys, is that what 548 says? Here you go. This verse addresses the prophet directly and describes the book sent down to him, that is the Quran, as confirming the book that came before it, just as the gospel confirms the Torah. The Quran is also described as confirming earlier scriptures. The Quran is further described as a protector over the previous scriptures. Now watch, these are Muslims, meaning that the Quran testifies to the validity of the earlier scriptures and serves as their trustee, keeper, and guardian. Nothing about corruption. So let me finish it. The idea of the Quran as guardian, keeper, previous revelation, consistent with 541c, 545c, which report that the Prophet ordered the sentence of stoning for the two idolaters, as well as retribution for killing and injury. Let me skip that part. Let's go here, because I don't want to eat up time. Alternately, it could mean that he should judge the people of the book according to what God has sent down to them, meaning, namely their own scriptures. The Quran being the criterion is telling Muhammad, tell them to follow their scriptures, is exactly the context of 543 to 47. Does an incident discussed in verses 41, 43. Although verses 41, 47 taken together suggest the ability of the Jews and Christians judging by their own scriptures, and thus continuing spiritual guidance to be found in those scriptures, the verse goes further by asserting the provincial nature of different religious communities and their distinct laws and practices. You can give me Nicholas Sinai, I'll give you the Muslim scholars of study Quran that disagree. So there you go. And I didn't say, just correct it, I know you said legal judgments, but again, how can they know what the legal judgments of Jesus are if they don't have his authentic gospel? I think it's over by now, but go ahead. You can have the final word.
Right, Khalil. So the only thing. Well, I guess if Sam, if you're okay with him having the last word, that's fine with me. But then we're gonna get to Q&A.
Okay,
sure. Okay. So just on this, so you audience will remember that when I gave I showed that there are three responses to the Islamic dilemma. Okay. Now, Sam, I appreciate you cited the study Quran, but they are the minority view. They're part of response number 2. Okay. So you're not really telling me anything I don't already know. I know who the authors of the study Quran are. You know, they are perennialists, and they also say in their commentary that the New Testament doesn't teach the Trinity. So you're quoting one part of the study Quran that you think is a point against me, but the same authors of the study Quran, they would dispute your entire reading of the New Testament because they're perennialists, and you should find out how perennialists read the New Testament, because they don't affirm that the New Testament teaches the Trinity, the Incarnation, and this sort of thing. But again, they're part of a minority opinion. Now, I sort of don't remember exactly what else you were saying before. I did say Surah 5 is about legal matters. Now, the question of how is a Christian in the time of Muhammad supposed to understand what the legal teachings are? Well, it's very simple, okay? He goes into whatever he has, he finds the words of Jesus. Jesus has legal teachings. Any legal teaching that's consistent with what the Quran says, specifically Surah 5, they would follow. And they are allowed to follow their own legal teachings. The Jews are allowed to follow their own legal teachings because the Quran, from a governance perspective, is quite a pluralistic document. It doesn't want to force Jews and Christians to follow the law of Prophet Muhammad, so it allows them to follow the laws that they have. Now, as for this term, Muhayman in the Quran, again, Nikolai Sinai represents an academic, critical perspective, and when he says Muhayman means the arbiter, that's from that perspective. The study Quran people are representing a perennialist perspective, which is the minority view that the New Testament or the four Gospels are preserved, and they're entitled to their opinion. But theirs is not an academic opinion. Theirs is a partisan opinion. And if you want to follow their partisan opinion, that's fine, Sam. But you still have to then deal with this other issue of the interpretation of the Torah that you have, the interpretation of the New Testament, because there's a lot of academic scholarship that would say that the Trinitarian reading of the New Testament is just not historically true, that this is just a later back projection onto the text. Similarly, your Trinitarian reading of Genesis, where you say there's two Yahwehs in Genesis 19, right? We can talk about that if you want. I think it's a very tenuous reading. But this, for your dilemma to work, you have to A, show that the Quran affirms the New Testament, which it does not. It only affirms the gospel of Jesus, okay? And B, you also have to show on your own, once you've brought a Muslim to the Bible, okay, you also have to show that the New Testament teaches the core doctrines that you believe in as a Christian, which, even if I grant you your canon, I would be able to dispute with you on the Trinity, on the Incarnation, on vicarious atonement, and all these other matters. So that's why, for all these different reasons, I don't think the Islamic dilemma in the end is successful, especially for educated.
You had me
people.
like looking at the whole fucking
now
map.
Let's turn to Q&A now,
He
and
timed it here.
we're gonna have.
He might have timed me. He might be
Cameron,
here.
can I
Alley,
just
tower.
respond? I would love to
Fuck.
engage you, but Danny, you understand.
Yeah, he went through
From
fast,
my
man.
perspective, because I'm not an academic. Hopefully, one day I'll be educated. I prefer exegesis.
I was
So
like
if you want to
scared of
engage
being
me
where I was, to be honest.
on the Bible,
In the middle of all those places.
please, let's not appeal to academic scholarship. Let's do exegesis, and then I'll be more than happy to discuss with you whether Genesis talks about two Yahwehs or not. But if you're going to quote scholars, you can quote them. They mean nothing to me. So if you want to meet me on my turf, let's do exegesis, and we can even discuss Muhammad exegetically and see what the word means, doesn't mean. I'll be more than happy. But if it's scholarship,
Who's
then
exegesis?
Let's
Who's
move.
ex-
Sorry, we've got to move on. We've
Sam,
got to
like
move
your
on.
exegesis,
We've
my
gotta move
who's
on.
exegesis?
yeah,
We've got to
contextually,
move on.
grammar, history.
All right, I've muted both of you guys. We got to move on, do some Q&A. All right, I'll unmute you guys. So what I want to do, because there's an opportunity here
they're
to
fine
today.
just speak past each other and go way too long. We've got a lot of super chats we need to get to. So let's do 2-minute responses, whoever it is addressed to, and then a 1-minute counter response, and that's it. Okay, no more responses past that.
Em, how many do
So
you have,
whoever
by
it's
the way?
addressed to, do what?
How many do you have? Because I want to know how much time you got. Because I have to also discuss with someone after this, so I just want to know how much time.
Oh, I've got about 30, a little bit over 30
Okay,
minutes.
let's go through it, because I know you got to go and I got to meet someone. I got to speak to someone.
So,
online.
so this one is addressed to Sam. So, for example, he's going to get 2 minutes of a response, and then Khalil will get a 1-minute response after that counter response, and then we'll move to the next super chat. All right. So this first one is Sam. Do you believe that Moses wrote the Pentateuch?
Of course, I believe he wrote the bulk of it, because that's the position of the Old Testament writers and the New Testament writers, irrespective of what modern critical scholarship says. That's why I'm not impressed with modern critical scholarship. Simple and to the point.
All right. That was easy. All right, Khalil, anything to say in response?
Look, I think that not only does modern scholarship doubt that Moses wrote the Pentateuch, but even if we put that aside and we do our own exegesis, if we open up the Pentateuch and we find all the mentions of Moses writing something, it'll never actually say Moses wrote the Pentateuch. The only thing it says is that Moses wrote down the law or the Torah, and that's referring to specific laws that you'll find in, say, Deuteronomy, maybe in Exodus. But you'll never find anything in the Pentateuch itself that says Moses wrote 5 books, or that Moses even wrote the book of Genesis. So I know Sam doesn't care about scholarship, but I care, and I think your audience cares about scholarship. There's a scholar, Professor Ralston, professor of Semitic languages at George Washington University, and he has an online article which is very good. He actually says that the Pentateuch itself does not present itself as being written by Moses, but as an anonymous account about the history of the world. And he's not going by this sort of secular stuff that Sam doesn't like. He's saying, look, if we picked up the Pentateuch and we read it on its own terms, we wouldn't find that Moses wrote it.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Another question from Bobby. How can, and this one I think is addressed to Sam, how can the New Testament be considered reliable if early manuscripts contain numerous alterations in key doctrinal passages and later additions or interpolations?
Yeah, you're asking the right question for the wrong debate. I can grant the fact, and I want Khalil to hear me carefully, I can grant the fact New Testament's corrupt, and yet the Quran confirmed the New Testament, which means the Quran is wrong. That's the dilemma. If you say the New Testament is full of variations, and Andani, Dr. Andani, I'm not trying to mispronounce your name, he deals with academic scholarship. He's aware of the qiraat and the ahruf and the variations. We can have a field day when it comes to variations, but to stick on the topic, if the New Testament manuscripts are corrupt, that means the Quran is false. That's the
Class
part
lasts
of the
like
dilemma.
45 seconds, I
Because
guess.
if you're a Muslim, you don't have the option, contrary to what Adani says, to say that the New Testament's corrupt and only contains core truth. The Quran doesn't argue that way. The Quran says whatever the Christians and Jews had, that's the uncorrupt, preserved words of God. I'm arguing from the context of the Quran, not from outside sources. So if the New Testament's corrupt, Muhammad is a false prophet. New Testament preserved, Muhammad is a false prophet. Welcome to the wonderful world of the Islamic dilemma.
All right, and Donna, you've got 1 minute.
Yeah, so again, the Quran never authorizes the New Testament. So even if you go beyond the manuscript problem, you have a canonization problem. The New Testament wasn't canonized as 27 books until the 4th century. And then the 4 Gospels are not canonized until, say, the 2nd century. The funny thing is that the Quran doesn't endorse the Christian canon, let alone the preservation of the Christian text. So we have a canon problem to begin with. The only canonical revelation the Quran explicitly authorizes is the gospel taught by Jesus. And the Quran says that the people of the book mix truth with falsehood. So the New Testament is a mixture of authentic revelation and false interpretation.
All right, let's move on to the next question from Stephen. How does Dr. Andani harmonize Surah 157 and Shock saying that the Gospel of Jesus was written by John, yet John's Gospel contradicts the Quran?
Before I answer, and another time, can I put up a slide or no?
It's possible. Go ahead and share your screen.
And now Noah was last alive already. Fuck.
All right. Is this visible?
It's up
All
there,
right.
yep.
Okay, 2 minutes, right? This is
Yes,
the
2
quote.
minutes.
Okay, this is the quote of Ibn Ishaq, and I knew this would come up because this is one of Sam's favorite passages. So this is the quote. Ibn Ishaq is apparently quoting the Gospel of John. Okay, he is, but take a look at what is highlighted here. These are 3 places where Ibn Ishaq has actually altered the Gospel of John. Namely, the word Father has been replaced with the word Rabb, or Lord. This means Ibn Ishaq did not actually believe the Gospel of John was perfectly preserved, because he actually had to correct the text. This is not just my opinion. Sidney Griffith, a Catholic scholar, Sidney Griffith said that Ibn Ishaq firstly subscribes to the Quranic
Oh my
idea
god,
of
they have
the
to save his
gospel.
fucking
He speaks
life.
of the gospel in this
There's
quote
2 ways.
as what
You guys
was
are free.
revealed to Jesus, okay? And number 2, Sidney Griffith notes that Ibn Ishaq doesn't believe the Gospel of John is fully preserved
Place a
because
wall
he
in
had
the
to
box.
correct the Gospel of John, and Ibn Ishaq did that because Ibn Ishaq follows the Quranic view, which in the view of Sidney Griffith is that the Christians actually have corrupted their scriptures. So Sam, you should really stop using Ibn Ishaq as one of your favorite quotes, because the scholarship doesn't agree with you, and neither does Ibn Ishaq.
Actually, I was prepared to bury Sidney Griffith's comments because I already addressed them.
Nah.
Actually, you're wrong. Ibn Ishaq does what your Quran does to all its sources. This is an indictment against you Muslims. You do the very thing the Quran accuses Jews and Christians. You'll quote the sources
Oh
of
lord,
Jews
no,
and
this is
Christians,
none of your fault.
but you will not quote them in those aspects where it shows that Muhammad is a false prophet. For example, the Quran will
Yo, trust
quote
me when I said this is not your
the
fault.
infancy gospel narratives of Jesus, where the baby Jesus talks about him being the Word of God, right, and the Son of God sent into the world. But then, lo and behold, your Quran comes and changes
bro.
the words of Jesus, saying, "I'm a
Let that happen
prophet,
again,
the slave
alright?
of Allah." That's an indictment against you Muslims that you do not find it something against your own standards of integrity and truth to change the wording to make it agree with your theology. And if Ibn Ishaq did not believe that John was authentic, that only buries him. Why? Because how does he know those parts that he didn't change are authentic? Arguing a circle, and contrary to your assertion, Ibn Ishaq
time.
confirms the authority of Scripture. Debate me on it.
All right, from King, Jesus loves you, Sam Shamoon from Malaysia. Very nice. All right, Chris Procession says it's confirmation bias. Muhammad confirmed a book that contradicts him. Muhammad would have confirmed a Gnostic text if it was
Blam,
there.
blam.
You think this one's addressed to Khalil?
I don't know if it's a question, but it would be for him, not for me. Because, by the way,
Right.
he does affirm Neoplatonism, so it's for monasticism.
No
Maybe
way,
I'll address
bro.
Do you want to say anything
Well-
about this, Khalil, or not?
All 3 are
I
heavy.
mean,
All
we can
2
skip
of
it
them are
just in
heavy.
the interest of time. That doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But I appreciate the super chat, Chris. All right, Michael. It is is it true
You
that
need to kill
Muhammad
this guy
had a
here.
statue of Mary and Jesus at home? This one will be just the response.
topic. Yeah, that's not right.
No, so
Oh
what we
my
have
God.
is there's an early report that when Muhammad went into the Kaaba, it was full of idols, and he ordered all the idols removed. But there was a painting of Abraham, and there was a painting of Jesus and Mary. And according to according to Ibn Ishaq, he didn't want that to be taken down, so that they left there.
That's where it comes from. Okay. All right. Next one from Brother Jay. What is the Injil? And we'll give this one
Let's play
to
default.
Khalil.
We gotta go for kills here.
He already explained. Does he have to
It was
answer? He
my
did an entire
fault.
presentation.
He can take 10 seconds and summarize his view.
We can skip it so we can do more
alarms, and I came back.
Okay.
This motherfucker was locked twice.
Fair
and
enough.
he can't even
AC
play by.
says is the hidden Injil with
That's
the hidden
fine.
Imam.
What's these questions? I
don't
don't
know.
understand these questions, man.
Well,
But,
again, we can skip it. I don't think it's relevant.
that is not real.
All right, the Heavy Heart Show. Muhammad was a sloppy plagiarist of the Bible. It's really quite simple.
Yeah, that's other than that. If you want to address it, go ahead.
You can address it if you want, Khalil, or we can.
And we can just skip it. Let's just deal with serious questions. Otherwise, we should.
Yeah, come on, guys. You guys are an
All right.
academic. Scholar. Come on. Let's be a little more charitable. But anyway.
All we do is only read the Quran. Muslims read the same text and says, no, it's not saying that. And when they are stuck, they ask for the Arabic. Islamic, Allah only understands Arabic. Imam is false.
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, let's keep on going.
Yeah, pontificating. I hope most of your chats are like this so we don't have to ask questions.
Oh my God! Right above his head twice,
Yes,
bro.
the king. Yeah, you guys get a break here. For both,
Damn.
how can corruption or interpretation account for atonement in all Old Testament and New Testament, especially since it's the cornerstone of faith and easy to memorize?
5 rounds in
maybe
a
this
row.
one for Sam.
Holy.
Want me to go first? Okay. Well,
Yeah, go first.
because I've already heard Andani appeal to academic scholarship saying
Let me
that
just ult
historical
us in here,
Jesus
I guess.
never argued
Oh, we gotta rush it.
that he would die an atoning sacrifice for the sins of the world.
If we don't rush it
That
together,
doesn't
we
come
lose the
from the
round.
authentic gospel of Jesus, even though the very so-called sayings of Jesus that he appealed to, as well as Paul Williams appealed to, you'll find in the sayings of Jesus, not the narrative. The sayings of
Just
Jesus.
rush,
Mark
man. I already
10:25,
ulted.
and Mark 14:22-25, which modern critical scholarship thinks is the earliest of the Gospels. Jesus talking about offering his soul as a ransom for many, and that
Yeah,
this
get out of
cup
there. Don't
is
fight that. Get out of
being shed for many.
See,
So
now she's
even in
alone.
the earliest strata, you have Jesus referring to his death as having sacrificial value to redeem
Yo,
and
why?
release
Oh my
and ransom.
God.
But now, what happens is they'll explain away saying, well, that's not an authentic saying of Jesus. That was interpolated by Mark. But then we're back to the dilemma, because if the Christians were to judge by Mark at the time of Muhammad, because that would be the gospel they had, and they read that as a saying of Jesus, they would believe that this is a teaching of the historical Jesus. So if it's not a teaching of the historical Jesus, that means Islam is wrong again. So we're back to the Islamic dilemma.
And
Okay,
Khalil, if you
and
got
here's
anything
the
to
way
say.
out of that dilemma. So the Quran explicitly denies that anybody bears the burden of another person or bears the sin of another person. So the Quran as a criterion would show the Christians in the 7th century that Jesus could not have taught that. Furthermore, the academic scholarship on this by James Dunn says that Jesus himself never taught that his death was
Ulted
a
the whole
vicarious
site,
atonement
and we're
sacrifice.
sitting in our spawn
In addition
still.
to that, the Christians have a dilemma.
They had
Luke
sight,
Acts
bro.
nowhere
Vice had
teaches that the
kills,
death
yeah.
of Jesus
It doesn't
is a
matter if you
vicarious
push
atonement
together,
for
you
sin.
can get
And you
over it,
believe
bro.
the author of
You think
Luke
one
is
person gets through and it
inspired.
closes?
She
So
had
even
her
if Mark
dorm.
taught that it's an atonement for sin,
We're all
but
dead,
the fact
bro.
that
They're
Luke
all
doesn't
outside.
teach that it's a atonement
They're all
for sin,
stunned,
you
just
have
like
one
you.
inspired
It's fine.
author in contradiction with another inspired author, and this is the Christian atonement dilemma.
All right, let's move on to the next super chat from Apostate Prophet. Khalil, how do you... Hang on just a second. Get this looking right. How do you explain that the earliest...
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Great review.
How do you explain that the earliest Christian texts, including the epistles, clearly say that Jesus is the Son of God who died for our sins? That's number one. Number two, what is the Injil, the good news? What exactly did Jesus promise?
So maybe the earliest extant Christian texts do teach that. I think Paul did teach that, and some of the epistles do. But the early Jewish Christians, led by James, the brother of Jesus, they did not believe that Jesus died for sins. In fact, Jesus himself didn't believe it. And as I said, the author of the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, he doesn't believe that Jesus died for sins. And one other corroboration of that is the early Jewish Christians, after the resurrection of Jesus, they continued to practice the Torah. They continued to go to the temple and offer sacrifices there. But if Jesus' death was an atoning sacrifice for sins, why would the early Jewish Christians, after Jesus' resurrection, continue the Torah and continue temple sacrifice to the point they even forced Paul to perform a Nazarite vice sacrifice? So there's an inconsistency. As for the term Jesus is the Son and God, I don't have time to discuss it here, but I would dispute that the Gospels actually teach that Jesus is God.
Now notice, ironically, he quotes Luke, who wrote Acts, to tell you that the Jews continue to observe temple sacrifices, but that's the same Luke and Acts that present Jesus and his followers as affirming the divine sonship of Jesus Christ. So he wants his cake and eat it too. And secondly, you just argued from silence. To say that Luke did not mention the atonement is not the same as saying he denied the atonement. As an academic, you don't want to make these leaps in logic because that's a logical fallacy. And thirdly, you're wrong. In Luke 22:19-20 and Acts 20:28, there we're told that Jesus will shed his blood for the new covenant, which is for the forgiveness of sins. So stop parroting Bart Ehrman, who's been refuted, and stay current with current scholarship. So you're wrong. And if it is corrupted, the Quran is wrong because it's telling Christians to judge by that gospel. The only gospel they had is the New Testament, which means, again, the Quran is wrong and Muhammad is a false prophet. Can't have your cake and eat it too. I'm sorry, Daniel.
All right, let's move
Wall
on
blinded.
to
Kills
Tish
me wall
Soto.
blinded.
Who wrote the Injil?
Wow.
I guess this one's for Khalil.
Wow.
Well,
You can
originally,
take as much time as you want.
yeah. So the Injil is the teaching of Jesus, and from a historical perspective, that's literally the name of what he taught. And we know for about a century or so, according to modern scholarship, the early Christians had a more oral conception of Jesus' teaching. So Jesus' teachings were passed on orally. That's what Q basically is, right? And then at some later point, the Jesus tradition is sort of written down, and these Jesus sayings are sort of transmitted in writing at some point, and then the anonymous gospel authors, they pick up these Jesus sayings and they have a narrative that they'd heard orally, and they put it in writing. So the Injil, from a historical perspective and even from a Quranic perspective, it is an oral revelation. It's not a physical book.
Guys, you see the circle of reasoning again? How do you know that Jesus preached the gospel what it is? Oh, because of the gospels, which are corrupt and unreliable and anonymous. So you trust the gospels to tell you that Jesus preached the gospel, but when the gospels then tell you that Jesus also made statements, or they make statements about Jesus that show him as a false prophet, oh, that's where it's corrupt. Moreover, how does he know about Q? Q is extrapolated from the material found in Matthew and Luke. So if Matthew and Luke are reliable enough to give you Q, then why are they unreliable in other areas where they show that Jesus proclaims his sacrificial death, his divine sonship? And moreover, there's a saying in Q, Matthew 11:27, Luke 10:22, where Jesus says, all things have been handed to me by my Father. No one knows who the Father is except the Son, and no one knows who the Son is except the Father, and to whom the Son reveals him. That saying from Q, which predates the gospel, shows that Islam is false and Muhammad is a false prophet. Can't have your cake and eat it too, and that.
All right. Next one from David. For Khalil, why hold Q, the Quran, I suppose, is not affirming the New Testament? What if the Quran author was mistaken, thinking the New Testament was given to Jesus? Seems to assume divine authorship. So maybe saying that you're kind of begging the question here.
Yeah, so again, if the Islamic dilemma is an internal critique, which I said at the beginning that it is an internal critique and it's only presented to believing Muslims, then a Muslim can assume the Quran is from God, and they can simply say, okay, how does the Quran define the Injil? They never rotate, bro. But frankly, even if you put that aside, you can do an academic investigation of how does the Quran define the Injil, and you don't end up with the New Testament. So I don't even have to assume divine authorship for what is the Quranic conception of the Injil. Just like a lot of scholars ask, what is the Quranic concept of kitab? And Daniel Madigan, he applies a principle of charity. He's a Catholic priest. He says, look, if we want to know what kitab means in the Quran, we should read the Quran holistically. We shouldn't just assume the Quran is a disjointed, incoherent text. You only would conclude that a text is incoherent if all the possibilities of a coherent reading are impossible or completely nullified. But in the case of the Injil, we have a coherent notion of what the Injil is in the Quran, and it doesn't comport with any
That's
definition
the
of
last
the New
person Beige
Testament,
flying.
which Sam still has to prove. It's been about 3
On
hours.
site.
I'm still waiting for the Quranic mention of the 27 books of the New Testament.
And I'm still waiting for you to show me the Quran, where the Quran says how many surahs make up the Quran and how many verses make up each surah of the Quran. It's not in the Quran. Therefore, if you're going to follow that criteria, how do you know what the Quran is? The Quran doesn't tell you. Stop arguing from silence. That's a bad way of responding and refuting and proving your case. Moreover, I did more than that. I showed you the Quran says whatever revelation they had, that is the uncorrupt revelations of God. And they had the New Testament, whether you like it or
Go
not.
into
Even
mid.
you admit that the Quran is aware of the New Testament, interacts with it. Again, it's like you want to have your cake and eat it too. And finally, it's irrelevant what modern 21st century academic scholarship says. Unless you think the Quran is irrelevant, it wasn't meant for that time period. It was only meant for you scholars today. So if that's the case, the Quran was revealed in the wrong time period. Allah should have sent it down in the 21st century for you scholars. You have to answer what it means in its historical context. And I've given you context within the Quran and outside sources, and your case has been soundly
It's
refuted.
always been possible.
There
They
is a
literally won
dilemma.
like 10 fucking rounds
The
in a
Quran
row.
confirms the Bible and yet denies its core doctrines, which means Muhammad's a false prophet. Come home to Jesus, and then he's waiting.
All right, next one from another one from David. For Khalil, Reynolds argues the Quran didn't possess knowledge to know this difference, how Jews, Christians, and the Quran author envisage these scriptures. What is your opinion?
Stun, move.
That's for him, right?
That's for him. It looks like his internet connection kind of went in and out. Yeah.
What was the question?
Feel free
How many more do you have?
to, we have a lot. We're only about a
Do you have time for all of them? 'Cause I know you gotta be out of here.
We'll get as
left.
many as we can.
How many more minutes?
Khalil, are you back?
pushing.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, it just froze from
One's
time
on
to time,
site.
So I got
Okay,
kicked
no
out.
worries.
Sam's argument was too powerful. It booted me out of the room.
Oh!
Sit your ass
Too
down.
scary. All right, so Reynolds argues, he's talking about Gabriel Said Reynolds, argues that the Quran didn't possess knowledge to know this difference, how Jews, Christians, and the Quran author envisage the scriptures. What is your opinion?
So I've shown you in my slideshow that based on the scholarship we have, and Sam, the reason why I cite scholarship is you just said in your prior comment before I got booted, you have to read
Nobody's
the
watching
Quran
heaven
in
right
its
now.
historical context. Yeah, I agree. That's what
sure.
scholarship does. That's what the whole field of Quranic studies does. Just like biblical studies read the Bible in its historical context. So the scholarship that reads the Quran in its historical context has concluded that the Quran is quite familiar with some very fine details within the
I
Bible,
think we should fake
within
it.
the Old Testament and New Testament. So based on, say, the findings of Imran al-Badawi, which shows the Quran interacts with the Gospels, even at a textual level, I think the author of the Quran does know what Jews and Christians think about their scriptures,
Yeah.
and it knows to the extent where the Quran can correctly identify that their scriptures that they have are a mix of man-made revelation and actual revelation. And this is a conclusion that modern scholarship only until recently corroborated when it tells us that Moses didn't really write the Pentateuch, right? Jesus didn't actually say
There's still gonna be
everything
like
that is
2A
attributed to
after
Jesus
that.
in the New
And
Testament.
one mid.
The Quran
guessing.
is already saying this in a religious context 1,400 years ago, and now modern scholarship, much of whom is by Christians, is saying the
All
same
too, I
thing.
can just
So,
play back.
contrary to the Islamic dilemma, a lot of modern scholarship is a confirmation of
We don't have to use any
Quranic
of-
critiques
But I mean,
of
we have the last
scriptural
round.
corpus of Jews and Christians, and I think the reason why Sam doesn't like to cite scholarship is because most of the scholarship will go against his own beliefs.
Now, I noticed that he wants to respond to my response. We can do this all day, but I'm going to address what you just said. Contrary to what you just asserted, I also appeal to modern scholarship, but I don't swear by them because they're not my prophets or my messengers or my rightly guided imams. They can be mistaken. So, no, I have quoted scholars, but at the same time, you have to go to the Quran itself. And if you want to now know how the Quran was understood historically, you don't start with 21st century scholarship. You have to see how the Quran is being defined and explained and see if there's a consensus or they're all over the map. So again, I don't deny the importance of scholarship, but you swear by scholarship and you live by it. It's like they are your rightly guided imams. But more than that, You keep saying that Moses didn't write the bulk of the Pentateuch because he wrote in the third person. Well, that means Allah did not inspire the Quran because Allah speaks of himself in the third person.
Can you not
that
place
means
the wall
Jesus
like right
could not
here?
have uttered the words attributed to him in the Gospels because he speaks of himself in the third person.
Like
See, this
that?
is what happens when you blindly
Like
follow scholarship and
There we
not
go.
see how people spoke and wrote in
Yeah,
their
because if they
historical
push us,
context.
we're chilling.
All right, David sent in another one, but we're going to move on to another super chat here from the Heavy Hearts Show. The Quran can't be read holistically because it is full of contradictions. It's not an option.
Good kill.
Khalil, I guess that's for you.
There's one shot.
I mean, we should just skip this. This is not even a question. It's just an
Yeah, they're
assertion. So.
Yeah, let's get to the
All right.
question.
Yeah, this next one is not a question either. I'll still put it on the screen. People can read it
Oh
if
my
they'd like
God.
to. All right, this one is a question for Khalil. Does the scientific miracle...
They're both there.
That's not on topic. We might as well skip that one. Yeah, let's keep on going here.
I think you only have 13 more minutes, huh? Brother Kummer, you got to head out, right?
We'll see, yeah. I've got 13 minutes. I can go a little bit past that, maybe 5 or 10 past that.
Together.
We'll
Shit.
get to as many as we can.
Don't mind
one
if I
more.
go off camera, right? Before I walk, right, as I listen, 'cause I'll be listening.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
All right, go ahead.
That's fine.
This is for me, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think this one's for
One
you.
more,
The topic
one
is
more,
the
come
Islamic dilemma, not the Christian dilemma. Stop being up the 27 books and stick to the topic.
Okay.
Not a
So-
question, but
All right. Okay, I think it's for me. I'll take your advice. I repent. I'll make Toba, I guess. Is he down to me, right? I guess it's not to you, it's to me.
no, I think it's Khalil.
I think it's for me. No, so I'll try to be quick. The reason why I have to bring it up is because premise 1 of the Islamic dilemma says the Quran confirms the divine inspiration, authority, and preservation of the New Testament. Now, the New Testament is a library of 27 books that were canonized in the 4th century, over 300 years
They got
after
Vice here.
Jesus.
They got Vice here. Let's
So
try to rotate.
my solution
Still make
to
noise
the
though.
Islamic
Still make
dilemma
noise.
is to attack premise 1. And that's basically what I do. I show that there's no positive case in the Quran that affirms premise 1, basically. And then what the Quran does affirm, which is just the gospel of Jesus, that definition or concept of gospel
let's go.
doesn't match a 27-book canon. So I didn't call that premise
Nah,
1
we're chilling.
refutation the
It's on
Christian
the race.
dilemma.
Oh,
I just refer to the fact that the burden of proof is on the Christian to show that the Quran affirms a 27
one up here. One up here.
New Testament canon, which it clearly does not. Once that premise is destroyed, the Islamic dilemma basically collapses onto itself. And the thing is
We
that
gotta wait for
a
something.
Christian like Sam has no way of even validating the 27-book canon as being from God except by appealing to circularity. Sam has to say that the 27 books are true revelation because the church said it. But then if I ask him to prove the authority of the Roman Catholic Church, he's going to have to appeal to arguments out of the 27 books. So he has to presuppose the 27 books are from God. So that then leads to a sort of a Christian circularity dilemma. But that's not what I was arguing during the presentation.
GG's.
No, actually, I'll appeal to the Quran if I'm speaking to a Muslim, because according to chapter 3, verse 55, 61:14, if you believe the Quran is divine and you believe Allah cannot lie, he swore that the followers of Jesus would be victorious, and he gave them victory, and they dominated over the unbelievers, and he'd empower them to be victorious till the day of resurrection. So if the Quran is true, then the true church prevailed, and the true church looks nothing like Islam, because the true church held to the 27 books of the New Testament and the books of the Old Testament and affirmed the Trinity. And you actually proved my case. Guys, I want you to keep hearing what he says. It wasn't until the 4th century the New Testament canon was finalized. Well, by the time Muhammad, that means they knew what the canon was. And since Muhammad is appealing to his contemporaries, not to the 4th century, his contemporaries would know when he says, you are to uphold the Torah and the gospel, all the revelation given to you, means that you uphold your New Testament, because that's God's word. But if we do that, Muhammad is a false prophet and antichrist. And I'm not saying to disrespect, I'm just saying theologically, and he has to go. That's why the Islamic dilemma. So thank you for making my case again. I'll just use your Quran to make my case that you're effectable.
All right. This next one is not a question, but I'm going to read it out, and then if anyone wants to comment, feel free. This one was a very substantial super chat. The secular Jewish and Christian scholarship of Larry Hurtado, Metzger, Andrei Orlov, Hengel, Boyarin, Schaefer, Siegel, etc. is well received and destroys the deconstructionist nonsense Muslims, atheists, and Gnostics go to the go to as the academic consensus.
This is more
Feel free to
about
comment.
powers in heaven, so it's not relevant topic. He's talking about scholarship that talks about the two powers in heaven, where you have, because Daniel Boyarin, Larry Hurtado are known for what the early Christians believed and how Jewish views of two powers in heaven were deemed heretical later on. I don't really think it's relevant, but unless Professor wants to address it, this is about the two powers in heaven, which we, hopefully, God willing, will have a discussion on in the future.
We didn't talk about that today, so we can skip it.
Yeah, so at this point, I am going to have to be a little bit more selective with these super chats. I do want to thank everyone for sending them in, but I will have to kind of go through and just try to select ones that are going to be relevant for the rest of the program. So Apostate Prophet sends one in. He says, why in the world would Jews and Christians rely on Muhammad and Islam to decide what is and is not authentic in their own text? Isn't my book decides which parts of your book are authentic a clear fallacy? Why don't we give this one to Sam to answer first?
Yeah, well, to represent to Steelman, Professor Ndani's position, he's actually saying that in response to us, we're saying that the Quran confirms the Old and New Testament scriptures and yet contradicts those scriptures, and therefore the Quran must be false. His response is, no, it doesn't. For a Muslim who believes in the Quran is the criterion for them to determine which parts of the previous revelations remain intact or corrupt, and therefore the Quran is ultimate authority for them. So I'm trying to steelman his position. So again, that was the debate. Does it only affirm parts of the Bible or all of it? And does it acknowledge a New Testament or not? That was the debate. So I hope I did a good job representing your position.
Khalil, if you got anything to say in response, feel free.
Yeah, so I would simply say that for starters, just to answer the question, Surah 5 says that Jews and Christians came to Muhammad to obtain legal rulings. That's like that whole section of Surah 5 is about that. Now, why did they come to him in the first place? It's not historically clear why, but they did. So the Quranic answer to the Jews and Christians who don't follow Muhammad religiously, they probably followed him politically, and they said they wanted to give legal rulings. The Quran said, look, like for your legal rulings, you should go to the laws